Chapter 1428. These manuscripts should be of some use to you. Take all of them back for reference. Jiang Pengji said bluntly, there are more complete regulations for farming. I'll get someone to send you a copy when the time comes. There shouldn't be any mistakes if you follow it step by step. Zhongguang's main task is to formulate a detailed regulation on how to replenish the fertility of the farmland. It's best if it can be used next spring to guarantee a harvest the next year. When Doshi heard that, he was both excited and forced to smile. This was a big task. If it was done well, he would be worthy of the title of cadet. If it was not done well, it would not be as simple as ruining his reputation. He would lose all standing and reputation. However, Doshi was not a man who backed down when faced with a difficult problem. He took a deep breath and solemnly accepted this important task. The first batch of public toilets was built within the boundaries of Xianyang District. Basically, there was one public toilet on each street. Every toilet was divided into two sections for men and women. Due to the lack of technology, although Xianyang District had drainage pipes, there was no network management system specially used to deal with dirty excrement. If public toilets were to be built, they could only choose dry toilets. Someone would be sent to clean the manure tank regularly to ensure that the smell would not be too strong. This move won the support of many people. Although there were toilet buckets in their homes, it was not easy to deal with. They could not build toilets for every household. When they went out to work or do business, many people and traders could only find a secluded place to relieve themselves. It was fine for men. They could lift their pants and turn their backs to the crowd. Any corner of the wall could be a toilet, but it was inconvenient for women. From a certain perspective, this was one of the reasons that prevented women from leaving the shackles of their families. Although Jiang Pengji was strict with the public security and health management of Xianyang District, there were always people who knowingly violated the law. It was better on the main streets where business was flourishing. People did not dare to act recklessly. However, it was bad in the remote corners. When the weather was hot, the stench was overwhelming. Sometimes when they went out, they would accidentally step on a pile of cow, sheep, pig, dog, or human waste. This was the situation in the big cities, not to mention the small places. Regarding this, the ordinary people were used to it. They had nothing to complain about. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji suddenly came up with such a move. The ordinary people naturally celebrated and beamed with joy. People were thick-skinned. Even illiterate people had a sense of shame. They also knew that exposing their private parts in the open was an eyesore. They had no choice in the past. It would be great if there were public toilets for them to solve their physiological problems. Most of the commoners were looking forward to it, but not everyone was in favor of this plan. There was no lack of contrarians in this world who felt good about themselves and would find fault with everything. Who doesn't have a bowl? Why do they have to make such a thing? It's really a waste of manpower and money. He was scolding Jiang Pengji for looking for trouble and for not knowing where to spend her money. What kind of public toilets are separated by gender? Most of the women don't go out at all. What's the point of doing this? Although the public toilet isn't an open field, it's not a house either. How can a woman take off her clothes as she pleases? If she's not careful, someone might see it. This was because the existence of women's toilets was meaningless. Some people were worried that women would be taken advantage of in public toilets. If a woman was offended in a public toilet, who would she look to for justice? When Jiang Pengji said that the female toilet would be strictly guarded to ensure the safety of the women, the group of people had something to say. It took so much manpower to manage and maintain a public building that was not profitable at all. It was really a waste of manpower and money. Jiang Pengji was speechless. The contrarians really couldn't be provoked. No matter what she did, they could find fault with it. No matter how the group of ancient keyboard warriors pointed at the country and spoke with vigor, Jiang Pengji still had to do what she had to do. She had a lot of things on her hands. Not only did she have to follow Hanyu to revise the child protection law several times, but she also had to make the law conform to morality and adapt to the current trend. She also had to guide Shi from the side. The group of people traveled from south to north. Once she was busy, she forgot everything. When the public toilets were completed and put into use, the child protection law began to take shape, and she figured out a simple plan to gain weight. More than a month passed by in a flash. The temperature was getting colder. It was late autumn. Jiang Pengji finally found a chance to take a breath and stop her busy steps. Of course, she didn't relax much. There was still a pile of official documents in the government office. When she was ready to face reality with a tragic heart, she found a figure who looked like a pine and bamboos sitting in the hall with his head bent over the table. Jiang Pengji rubbed her eyebrows and went forward to ask, "Zixiao, have you recovered from your illness?" Wei Si heard the movement and raised his head to look at Jiang Pengji. His slightly pale lips curled into a warm smile. He stood up and bowed. "Greetings, my lord. Si has recovered greatly." Jiang Pengji squeezed his hand. The temperature of his hand was much lower than normal. "You call this recovering greatly?" "It wasn't easy for me to grow that little bit of fat in the past. It's all gone after not seeing you for a while. Although government affairs are busy, we still have enough manpower. Why did a sick person like you jump out to join in the fun?" She sighed. "If you really want to recuperate, you should be rounder, right?" Jiang Pengji preferred slightly chubby men. It felt good to hold and touch them. However, Wei Si belonged to the typical type of person who couldn't gain weight no matter how much you raised him. Wei Si said, "To be able to do something within my ability, for my lord, for me, this is more nourishing than any nourishing medicine." Things happened one after another outside. He saw it and felt anxious. How could he sit still? When the injuries on his body were almost healed, Wei Si immediately returned to his post. He was a model worker. Jiang Pengji sat by the table and played with his big sleeve with one hand. "So, Zixiao, are you sure that you've recovered?" Wei Si's gaze was somewhat puzzled, but he still nodded honestly. "Zixiao, do you still remember that I said that I would give you a gift when you recovered?" The corners of Jiang Pengji's lips curled into a malicious smile. Wei Si's heart was pounding. He had an ominous premonition. "I'm indeed almost recovered." Wei Si could only think about it again and again. "My lord loves me so much. My family doesn't lack anything." Jiang Pengji used her index finger to touch his lips. She smiled and said, Wrong. You really don't have the thing that I want to give you." Wei Si was speechless. The ominous premonition was getting stronger. What should he do? Although he said so, Wei Si waited for a long time uneasily, but he didn't receive the gift that Jiang Pengji was talking about. He was relieved and a little melancholic at the same time. Did my lord forget? Of course not. Jiang Pengji was simply too busy. It was nearing the end of the year. There would only be a lot of things waiting to be dealt with. How would she have the extra energy to think about love affairs? Anyway, Wei Si's frog soup had been cooked for so many years. Whether it was earlier or later, the result would be the same. Feng Zhen saw that Jiang Pengji could still smile even when she was so busy. He suddenly felt horrified. "My lord, have you encountered something good?" Jiang Pengji raised her hand and placed it on Feng Zhen's shoulder. She smiled unrestrainedly. "Take a guess." Chapter 1429. "I can't guess it." Feng Zhen helplessly brushed her hand away. He did not want Wei Si to see him with his arm around his lord's shoulder. Who could withstand Wei Si's ability to brew vinegar? Fortunately, Jiang Pengji's temperament was also a typical example of a wanton and unrestrained person, so she did not mind Feng Zhen's actions. "In any case, it's not a good thing," Feng Zhen said honestly. "Every time the Lord smiles so beautifully, someone is bound to be unlucky." His desire to live was very strong. He had just secretly insulted Jiang Pengji, and then he immediately flattered her. Jiang Pengji touched her face and muttered, "Does my smile look good?" Feng Zhen lied and said, "You look good." When Zixiao saw it, his legs went soft, and he couldn't walk anymore. But who would be the unlucky one? His lord was really not a kind person. Since he was targeted by her, he could only pray for his own good luck. "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder," Jiang Pengji said with a smile. "Even if I don't smile, his legs will go soft, and he won't be able to walk." When Feng Zhen heard this, he suddenly felt like his stomach was cramping up. In the past, the Lord still knew how to cover up the fact that she had an affair with Wei Si, But now, she was not afraid at all and was even narcissistic. If Feng Zhen knew about the existence of a streaming room, he would know that Jiang Pengji's action was called public display of affection, also known as public display of affection. My lord, please take it easy. Feng Zhen laughed bitterly and said, even though anyone who isn't blind can see it clearly, it hasn't been made public. Everyone can still lie to themselves and turn a blind eye to it. If this really gets out, it won't be easy to clean up the mess. It was one thing for everyone to know, but it was another for Jiang Pengji to expose her relationship with Wei Ci and announce it to the public. The relationship between Feng Zhen and Jiang Pengji was not only that of a subject and a ruler, but also that of a good friend. He treated Wei Ci like a teacher and a friend. From Feng Zhen's point of view, he really didn't want the two of them to be harmed by external forces. Of course, feelings were a matter between two people, but it also depended on their status. Jiang Pengji and Wei Ci's identity and status meant that she could not openly push Wei Ci to the surface. This wasn't love, it was harm. It was the embodiment of immaturity. Feng Zhen and the others were also very clear about their bottom line. They didn't care how they interacted in private, but on the surface, their relationship could only be that of a ruler and a subject. As a feudal lord, Jiang Pengji had a naturally powerful position. Nothing would happen to her. The one who would be hurt in the end would only be Wei Ci. I didn't make a big deal out of it, did I? Jiang Pengji said with a smile. I know what to do. Feng Zhen muttered. That's hard to say. After all, feelings between a man and a woman can get to their heads. Otherwise, why would it be said that the land of tenderness was the grave of a hero? No matter how brave his lord was, didn't he still succumb to the beauty Wei Ci in the end? Jiang Pengji couldn't help but roll her eyes. She said sarcastically, we've known each other for so many years. When have you ever seen me do something irrational? Instead of making a big fuss and losing Zixiao, it would be better to maintain the status quo, to live in the same quilt and die in the same grave. My lord, what you mean by this? Feng Zhen was very good at grasping the main point. He asked, when did you set your eyes on Zixiao? He had thought that was bad enough that Wei Ci had set his eyes on the 12-year-old lord. He didn't expect the two of them to be double arrows. Jiang Pengji coughed lightly and dismissed him. Why are you asking so clearly? Do you still want the young lord? If it weren't for Jiang Pengji's strong style, who knew how many people would have been urging her to get married, don't think that she didn't know that this group of people secretly yearned for the young lord. Feng Zhen couldn't help but cover his face secretly. I do want him. Unfortunately, Zixiao is a man and can't bear the heavy responsibility of childbearing. Besides, the young lord shouldn't have come at this time. This was the disadvantage of being a lord. She had to do it herself after 10 months. She couldn't be like a man and throw the child to the woman after they had sex. That wasn't right. As Feng Zhen said this, he suddenly thought of something. His lord and Wei Ci had been together for so many years. Why hadn't there been any good news? His lord's body couldn't make it? Impossible. His lord was more violent than a bear in the wild. Chasing a tiger across a ravine was no joke. Then Wei Ci's body couldn't make it? Feng Zhen thought of Wei Ci's weak body. He suddenly felt his teeth hurt and his stomach hurt. It hurt everywhere. He had thought of everything, but he didn't think that his lord hadn't taken Wei Ci at all. Wei Ci was still a virgin. He couldn't be blamed for not thinking of it. It was purely because Jiang Pengji was too familiar with him when they went to the brothel. She was even more familiar with prostitutes than he was. After confirming their gazes, there was no doubt that she was an experienced driver. Which experienced driver would guard a piece of meat that was already in his mouth and not bite it? After a bunch of reasoning, Feng Zhen could only tremble and accept the cruel answer that Wei Ci's body couldn't make a woman pregnant. He knew his lord's temperament. When she was stubborn, even 10 bulls couldn't pull her back. Who had the ability to force her to have sex with a strange man for the sake of child? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if his lord was willing to have sex with a second person, according to her standards, the person who was qualified to touch her bed couldn't be worse than Wei Ci. Then the problem was, how many men in this world could be better than Wei Ci? He handled both internal and external affairs at the same time. From big schemes to small trifles, there was nothing he couldn't handle. He was talented, had good looks, and had a good temperament. He could abandon his principles for his lord with such high standards. How many men in this world could compete with him? Forget to mention, Wei Si kept his chastity to his lord. Even if he found someone with conditions comparable to Wei Si, he would probably have a bunch of beautiful wives and concubines. His children would run around everywhere. As he thought about it, Feng Zhen suddenly felt his heart ache. Jiang Pengji didn't know what he was imagining. She asked in surprise, "Is your body unwell?" Feng Zhen said, "No. I suddenly remembered something. I'll take my leave first." Jiang Pengji said, "Then go do what you need to do." Feng Zhen turned around and went to find a famous doctor. He packed everything up and sent it to Wei Si's manor. Coincidentally, Wei Si was still busy dealing with official documents. Feng Zhen went forward and snatched his pen, then dragged him to the bed and sat him down. Wei Si looked at Feng Zhen, then looked at the doctors behind him who were carrying medical boxes and waiting for him. He was dumbfounded the whole time. What happened? Feng Zhen asked the doctors to take Wei Si's pulse one by one. He didn't allow Wei Si to stop them. When the doctors finished taking his pulse, they all looked at Feng Zhen mysteriously. This time, it was Feng Zhen's turn to be dumbfounded. Wei Si frowned and sent the doctors away. He asked helplessly, "Zisher, what's wrong with you today?" "What Feng Zisher?" He might as well ask someone to come and go crazy. Feng Zhen said, "If it's not your problem, is it the Lord's problem?" If that was the case, this was even more serious than Wei Si's health problems. If the Lord couldn't give birth, it would be a dead end. Chapter 14:30. Wei Si's heart trembled. He mistakenly thought that something was wrong with Jiang Pengji and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong with the Lord?" Feng Zhen stammered, "I'm not sure. It's just a guess the Lord perhaps can't give birth." Upon hearing this, Wei Si sternly reprimanded, "Who's spreading this rumor? The Lord's body is fine. Her Majesty couldn't give birth. So how did the two children in her previous life come about? Did they pop out a rock?" Feng Zhen lowered his voice and said, "It's not your problem. It's not the Lord's problem. Then why haven't we seen any traces of the young Lord after so many years? Even if they spent more time apart than together, the two of them have been adulterous for so many years. Shouldn't they have gotten together at least once? The Lord is still pure." Upon hearing this, Wei Si's ears reddened. "Where did you hear these rumors?" Feng Zhen was shocked. He was really shocked this time. "You coveted the Lord when she was 12 years old. Now she's almost 22 years old, yet you two are still pure?" Feng Zhen thought that he had heard wrongly. This was even more ridiculous than a sow climbing a tree or a sago blossoming. Jiang Pengji went to the brothel to drink wine with prostitutes. She was familiar with hugging people left and right, and words of love came out of her mouth. She had the skill that even the experienced prostitutes could not withstand, but she was actually a virgin? Wei Si was embarrassed and annoyed. "You're really indecent. Who said that a man and a woman had to roll in bed when they were in love?" What kind of rubbish was Feng Zhen's brain filled with? Faced with Wei Si's criticism, Feng Zhen could only chuckle. "You're really a virgin. You don't know the beauty of the relationship between a man and a woman." Wei Si's ears reddened even more, almost as if they were shoulder to shoulder with the setting sun. Feng Zhen said meaningfully, "Zixiao, you're older than the Lord by 6 years. In 2 years, you'll be of age." He had always thought that men over the age of 20 were no longer virgins. He didn't expect Wei Si to break his bottom line again and again. Wei Si wasn't in a good mood. He didn't need Feng Zhen's reminder. He said, "There's no rush to wait a few more years. The Lord's focus now should be on conquering the world, not on relationships. No matter what, we should wait until we have more than half of Zhongzhou in our hands before considering this matter." If he remembered correctly, the first time His Majesty became pregnant was not long after the two of them had their first time. Wei Si could not possibly take the risk of one night of pleasure and impregnate the other party, which would hinder his hegemony over the world. It was better to cultivate his moral character. To Wei Si, Physical compatibility was indeed wonderful, but it was definitely not as good as spiritual understanding and support. He was reborn to help her ascend the throne, not to drag her down. No one could stop him, not even himself. If anyone dared to obstruct him, Wei Si would not be lenient, including himself. Feng Zhen was speechless. Zhongzhou. Zhongzhou is not a place that Dongqing or Nanshan can compare to. The Nie family of Zhongzhou is very tricky. Would he only consider having children after taking over half of Zhongzhou's territory? Who knew how many years later that would be? Wei Si was old and weak. How could he still move? It's true that the Nie family's momentum is swift and violent. They become the most powerful feudal power in Zhongzhou, but it's only temporary. As long as Nielyang dies, the outside world can just stir things up a little and watch the internal strife of the Nie clan. Wei Si revealed a rare, gloomy expression. That year, a freak combination of factors allowed Nielyang to escape from a dead end, but his body has long been damaged by the years and days of poisons. All these years, he hasn't properly recuperated. Instead, he stubbornly fought for the power of the Nie clan and led the Nie clan to fight for the world in Zhongzhou. He's digging his own grave. The Nie clan of Zhongzhou was full of talents, but Wei Si had only taken a liking to two people in his two lives. One was the ghost genius Nielyang, and the other was Sunwen. It wasn't that the others were incapable, but they were too selfish. Even if they had the ability to rule the world, there was nothing to be afraid of. Nielyang was holding on with his life on the line. Sooner or later, he wouldn't be able to hold on. Sunwen had also been offended by the Nie clan and had long been lured to his side by Wei Si. He wanted to see how the Nie clan, who was obsessed with internal strife, would court disaster. Feng Zhen hesitated. Do you really remember that Zixiao's family and clansmen are all in Zhongzhou, serving the Nie clan? Wei Si's elder brother, Wei Dan, was Nielyang's close friend and right-hand man. So what? Wei Si's eyes were extremely cold. He said, I know which is more important and which is more important. He didn't know the Wei clan anything. He didn't know them anything in his previous life, and he certainly didn't know them anything in this life. If he had no choice but to fight with his elder brother because of their positions, he would be more ruthless and let the other party die a happy death. Was he heartless? In Wei Si's opinion, this was the greatest respect and affection. Feng Zhen could only shrug his shoulders. Since the problem he was worried about didn't exist, he didn't want to get involved. Wei Si was still a very reliable person. Feng Zhen didn't deliberately hide this move from Jiang Pingji. She heard about it the next day and was instantly overjoyed. Zisher is really a clown. This move is simply too flashy. Is he suspecting that Zixiao isn't capable? Wei Si was by Jiang Pingji's side. Hearing his lord's unbridled laughter, he suddenly felt tired. Zisher's suspicions aren't without reason. Let him be. But I know you can do it. If you can't, don't you still have me? Jiang Pengji wrapped her arms around Wei Si's neck from behind. She smiled and whispered in his ear, speaking of which, he's already suspecting that you can't do it. As a man, isn't Zixiao tempted at all? Wei Si's ears turned red. He pursed his lips and didn't speak. Did she think that he copied thousands of copies of the heart-calming incantation for nothing? Jiang Pengji saw that he didn't respond and laughed. But I'm tempted. Wei Si was speechless. His lord, could she not be so flirtatious? To prevent himself from getting burned, Wei Si hurriedly found a lame excuse and left. Jiang Pengji whistled like a hooligan. She was in an unprecedentedly good mood. Who said that you can escape from the palm of my hand? Regardless of whether it was her enemy or her prey, no one could escape. This year's New Year's banquet was held as usual. Jiang Pingji gave everyone 7 days of annual leave in advance. Yes, that's right. She actually stopped writing 7 days in advance and gave everyone their annual leave. The more generous she was, the more everyone trembled with fear. Feng Zhen was even more nervous, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Annual leave. How many years had they been yearning for it? When they personally experienced the beauty of annual leave, they felt uncomfortable all over, as if they were missing something. This year was calm and peaceful. The development of the various provinces was on the right track. One by one, the shadows of war were lifted from the ground, revealing a scene that could only be seen in a prosperous and flourishing age. As the creator of everything, Jiang Pengji's sense of achievement and satisfaction was self-evident. The New Year's banquet was held as usual. She was in a good mood and gave out big red packets to all the little kids who came to pay their New Year's greetings. When these children grow up, the world will definitely be a different scene. After all, Lu Shi was an ordinary person. It was already a long life for this body to live for 70 or 80 years. Jiang Pengji could only entrust the future to the group of children in front of her, who were full of vigor and hope. Qiguan Rang glanced at Wei Ci and sneered. We still lack a young lord. Without a young lord, no matter how many people there were in the new generation, it would be a waste. If the hard work of the previous generation could not be passed on to the next generation, wouldn't it be a waste of effort for others? Jiang Pengji was a little tipsy. There will be. She only hoped. Chapter 1431. After the New Year's banquet, everyone went back to the manor to stay up. According to previous year's practice, Jiang Pengji would either go back to sleep alone or stay up with Lu Zhao. This year was slightly different. Lu Shi and Gu Zhan were both there. As their daughter, she should accompany them. However, Jiang Pengji and Lu Shi had already laid their cards on the table. She did not want to face Lu Shi on such a beautiful day and continue to put on a fake show of filial piety. She simply said that she was not feeling well and left. Gu Zhan frowned and asked, "Where is Lanting not feeling well? Did you call the doctor to take a look?" The servant did not know and could only answer vaguely. Lu Shi, who was sitting at the head of the table, raised his eyebrows slightly and said calmly, "Lanting's status is different from the past. Since she is not feeling well, let her rest." Staying up for the new year was just a dispensable formality. He could not disturb Jiang Pengji's recuperation because of this matter. Seeing that Lu Shi had spoken, Gu Zhan could only swallow her words in embarrassment. Fortunately, my sister did not come. If she came, I don't know how ugly this scene would be. Lu Zhao was dressed in exquisite and luxurious clothes. Since he got married, he looked much more mature, but he still had the appearance of a fair and tender rich man of leisure. No matter who saw his appearance, they would always say that he was gentle and harmless. Why are you saying this? If others hear it, it will be embarrassing for no reason. Lu Zhao's wife still looked a little immature. Her every move was steady and polite. Hearing her husband's private murmur, she reminded him in a light tone. The two of them had been married for some time. Lu Zhao was gentle and accommodating, so the couple got along well. I sympathized with my two cousins. It was supposed to be a happy day, but it made the whole family unhappy. Lu Zhao glanced at his two cousins with the corner of his eye and sighed in his heart. Meng Heng and Nie Sun were also unlucky. They should have stayed at home with their wives and children to stay up for the new year. They did not expect Gu Zhan to have a sudden impulse. She hoped that the two of them could bring their families to accompany her. To put it nicely, she wanted to enjoy the happiness of a family. Could they refuse? They could not. Although Lu Zhao was a complete rich man of leisure, he was not stupid. He could see clearly in the dark. From his point of view, his two sons and Gu Zhan did not have feelings for each other. She would only push them away by being so forceful. Was this a mother who was eager to make up for her two sons? Lu Zhao snickered in his heart. His stepmother in name, but his aunt in reality was definitely not that sentimental. Lu Shi, who had raised him for 12 years, abandoned him just like that. He turned around and chose the current Jiang Pengji. In that case, how much weight did her eldest son, whom she had almost no contact with, and her youngest son, who had been missing for more than 20 years, weigh in Gu Zhan's heart? His eagerness to mend their relationship was more like trying to cover it up. She used her mother's naturally powerful identity to force her son to obey her, and then satisfy the guilt in her heart. Lu Zhao seemed gentle and harmless, but in his heart, he was not stingy with using the darkest thoughts to judge others. The whole family happily gathered together to celebrate the new year. That was the joy of a family. The group of people looked at each other, speechless. This was called mutual harm. On New Year's Eve that year, Meng Hung and Yesun's families had a terrible time. In the end, they had to use their children as an excuse to leave early. On Jiang Pengji's side, it was a completely different scene. Speaking of which, this is the first time I'm staying up alone with Zixiao on New Year's Eve. Jiang Pengji, who was unwell, refused to leave Wei Si's house at that moment. Looking at her lively appearance, she did not look unwell at all. Wei Si did not answer. He raised his hand and pushed the preserved fruit that she liked to eat in front of her. The corners of his lips curled into a faint smile. By the way, have you opened the gift that I gave to Zixiao? Wei Si said, I haven't opened it yet. Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and said, then open it now and take a look. Wei Si could not help but laugh. How can you open a gift in front of the host? I'm being impolite. Jiang Pengji winked at him. Her eyes were deep and bright under the candlelight. According to our relationship, this little bit of impoliteness is more like fun. Wei Si could not dissuade her, so he could only take out a square red box from his sleeve. The box was wrapped in a layer of unknown material. The outer skin felt soft and delicate. Even though Wei Si was knowledgeable, he could not recognize the fur of an animal. Under Jiang Pengji's burning gaze, he gently opened it. Under the candlelight, 2 spots of dazzling white light were reflected. It was extremely dazzling and beautiful. Is this a ring? Wei Si fixed his eyes on it and realized that the white light came from the jewels inlaid on the surface of the ring. As far as he knew, this shining thing was the King Kong that was spread to the central plains from a faraway country in the west. I heard that the hardness of gold is rare in the world. Even steel and bronze cannot be damaged. The surface of this object is smooth, and the arrangement of the cross-sections seems to be regular. It doesn't look like it was formed naturally. Does my lord know who made this object? He actually has the ability to make it look like this. Jiang Pengji said, a pair of diamond rings, just like you and me. She could not give Wei Si a status, let alone announce it to the world. For Wei Si, who was deeply educated in the ancient orthodox way, this was a pity. If he were to ask himself honestly, he reckoned that Wei Si had not thought of this in his previous life. Now that he realized it, he naturally had to do something about it. Diamond rings? Wei Si took out the 2 rings doubtfully and realized that the 2 rings were of different sizes. I secretly measured the thickness of your fingers to customize it, Jiang Pengji said. Shall I help you put it on? She was grateful to the old chief for buying it on her behalf. Otherwise, Jiang Pengji could only find a goldsmith in this world to make a pair. Wei Si said reservedly, thank you for your trouble, my lord. Jiang Pengji put it on for him. She reached out her hand in satisfaction and gestured for him to put the lady's ring on her too. Pure gold was soft and easily deformed after wearing it for a long time. Diamond rings did not have this concern. Regarding this, the old chief even mocked her. Because in Jiang Pengji's era, diamonds were indeed a very cheap raw material for jewelry. It was useless even if they were hard. However, Jiang Pengji was not after the value of the diamond itself. She was after the meaning that people gave diamonds. In salted fish's dimension, one had to buy a diamond ring to get married. Jiang Pengji naturally followed the crowd. This object is hard and won't deform even if you wear it for a long time. It will never change. Wei Si then realized that something was wrong. He only felt his heart was in a mess and his face turned red. Jiang Pengji reminded him, Zixiao, take a look. There's another thing in the box. Wei Si shyly took out the thing in the box. What is this? The object was squarish, soft, and cold. He pressed his fingers together and realized that it was a 2-layer structure. There was a circle of circular objects in the middle. He was puzzled. He did not know when his lord had gone around to his back. She breathed into his ear, and her fair and delicate hands slid down his neck and collarbone like agile snakes. This posture scared Wei Si so much that his whole body froze. He did not dare to move. Chapter 1432. Every minute is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. How many minutes have you wasted? Jiang Pengji's hand slid down the front of his neatly arranged shirt. It felt extremely delicate and warm. Wei Si's heart skipped a beat. He felt the temperature of his skin soar, and his hair stood on end. Zi Xiao's reaction. Do you not like me? It was clearly a complaint, but when she said it, it sounded like a mocking smile. Wei Si wished he could find a hole to hide in and never come out again. Jiang Pengji's lips slid across his neck. It was so hot that he wanted to jump up. My lord, Wei Si was somewhat incoherent. A scene from his previous life suddenly appeared in his mind. Although his majesty and his lord's attitudes were not quite the same, the undeniable stance was exactly the same. Tonight, will you obey me or not? I dare not disobey. Jiang Pengji leaned on his neck and teased him with a smile. Although I have no experience in matters between men and women, I know a thing or two and have some insights. Zi Xiao had a son and a daughter in his previous life. Could it be that he was still an inexperienced child? Such a scene, could it be that you have very little experience? Wei Si's face turned red. It was not because he was shy, but because he could not be tough in front of his lord. My lord, please don't tease me. After Wei Si finished speaking, his entire body was as red as a cooked prawn. His following words were inaudible. If Jiang Pengji did not have extraordinary hearing, she would have missed it. You should also take pity on me. It's not a good feeling to take a cold bath on New Year's Eve. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, since it's uncomfortable, why not let nature take its course? Wei Si coughed softly and prepared to get up with great self-control. In his previous life, he would not have dared to do so. From a certain point of view, was this considered being arrogant because he was favored? Jiang Pengji would not let him have his way. She held his neck with one hand, turned over, and pressed his head down. Half of her body leaned on him. He could not break free even if he wanted to, so he might as well lie down and be a salted fish. Zi Xiao. She leaned over and whispered in his ear, I heard that a husband and wife can use sheep intestines and fish bladder as a contraceptive, but it's not safe and clean. I'm trying to empathize with your filial piety, so I specially found another substitute. This is much better than sheep intestines and fish bladder. It's safe and effective. Wei Si was in a daze. He suddenly understood what the square-shaped thing in his hand was. He wanted to throw them away as if they were scalding hot, but Jiang Pengji was faster and held his fingers instead. Jiang Pengji asked him proudly, now you have no reason to object, right? While Wei Si was embarrassed and embarrassed, his breathing became heavy. He asked Jiang Pengji in a slightly hoarse voice, what does my lord intend to do? Jiang Pengji said, Yin and Yang are in harmony. Let nature take its course. Wei Si said awkwardly, I dare not offend you, my lord, nor dare to overstep my authority. It was Jiang Pengji's turn to be dumbfounded. She laughed involuntarily and said, so Zi Xiao likes women of lower status? Upon hearing this, Wei Si's jade-like face turned pale, but his breathing became heavier. It wasn't that he liked those below him. It was obvious that he didn't dare to offend those above him. For Jiang Pengji, she was both his lord and her majesty. No matter what, he did not dare to offend or overstep his boundaries, even in bed. After a while, Jiang Pengji heard Wei Si ask her in a voice as soft as a mosquito, that thing, how do I use it? Jiang Pengji couldn't help it anymore. She smiled as she carried Wei Si in her arms and walked into the inner room. Zi Xiao, do you know? I'm so happy with your hesitant look. I can't wait to dissect you and swallow you into my stomach. Wei Si was speechless. As a man, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, right? He felt that it was no different from his previous life. The only difference was that in his previous life, he was directly pressed on the floor. In this life, he could at least sleep on the bed. Zi Xiao, what are you thinking about at this time? Jiang Pengji couldn't wait to let go of his clothes. Her right hand slid to his waist and randomly touched the belt. She gently pulled and untied it. Wei Si blinked and suddenly said, if my lord is a man, this scene seems to be more reasonable. Jiang Pengji smiled and echoed, no matter if it's a man or a woman, you can't turn the tables. After saying that, she threw the belt out of the quilt. Without the belt to bind him, it was very easy to untie his clothes. Under the flickering candlelight, she threw the clothes one by one out of the bed. Seeing that Wei Si was about to become an egg with its shell peeled, Jiang Pengji herself was still. No, she was also missing 2 pieces of clothes. The lapel of her inner garment was loosened, revealing a light yellow lotus undergarment. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Wei Si was speechless. He quietly retracted his hand, but he was caught midway. Wei Zixiao, didn't you say not to offend or overstep your boundaries? Wei Si said, although I dare not overstep my boundaries as a ruler, men and women have different responsibilities in bed. I'm just doing my duty, that's all. After saying that, Jiang Pengji lifted the quilt and covered the 2 of them. Without the illumination of the candlelight, their vision was pitch black. Their other senses became more acute. Their breaths mingled, and the temperature of the air rose rapidly. Jiang Pengji fumbled to untie Wei Si's hair crown and jade hairpin, letting his long hair fall like a waterfall. She kissed him from his eyebrows to his eyes, all the way to his lips. Their lips touched, and the atmosphere that was originally as warm as the spring rain immediately became as hot as the scorching sun in summer. Wei Si was not stiff and did nothing. He took the initiative to wrap his arms around her neck and shoulders. He used his fingertips to tease the string of the undergarment and untied it. Jiang Pengji bit his lower lip in a punitive manner and teased him with a smile. A gentleman? Wei Si said helplessly, I'm also a man, but a man doesn't equal to a gentleman. Moreover, how can I restrain myself when my true love is in my arms? Under such circumstances, it was really difficult for him to ask him to be like Lu Xiaohui. If his lord knew her place, he could still tolerate it. He really couldn't help but light a fire everywhere. I love how you say one thing, but mean another. Jiang Pengji smiled. Now that we're being honest, I find you even more pitiful and adorable. They were originally people with feelings. A little provocation would cause dry firewood and blazing fire. Moreover, the 2 of them were already in a state of being honest with each other. Jiang Pengji lingered on his neck in a punitive manner. Wei Si could only force himself to stay awake. My lord, it's not good if someone sees traces of us tomorrow. Jiang Pengji bit his collarbone with her tiger teeth. She was neither gentle nor forceful, and the strength of her provocation made Wei Si gasp slightly. Who said that you can meet people tomorrow? Wei Si was speechless. We have all the time in the world. Jiang Pengji smiled. Why do you think I gave you this annual leave so readily? Wei Si was speechless. Jiang Pengji's hand slid down his waist. That piece of skin was extremely sensitive. He never knew that a person's body temperature could be so terrifyingly high. It seemed that he was scorched by the temperature of Jiang Pengji's palm. His whole body trembled, and his reddened eyes emitted misty water vapor. My lord, are you in pain? Both of their bodies stiffened for a moment. Jiang Pengji stroked his face with one hand and sealed it with a kiss. Chapter 1433. The frog soup that had been cooking for 10 years was finally ready. Jiang Pengji naturally would not let Wei Si go easily. Wei Si was also a young man. He looked slender and weak, but he was a man after all. Naturally, his situation was not bad. The 2 of them fooled around for the whole night. It was not until the sky turned white that the activity in the bedroom gradually stopped. It's day or rest. I want to sleep until I wake up naturally. Don't wake me up. Jiang Pengji hugged Wei Si's neck with both hands and yawned slightly sleepily. 2 drops of physiological tears squeezed out from the corners of her eyes. Why don't I ask someone to prepare hot water for a bath? Jiang Pengji muttered, We'll talk about it when I wake up. Sleep first. Like an octopus, she confined him in her arms. She closed her eyes and rested her head on his shoulder, finding a comfortable position. Wei Si tilted his head slightly. With the faint morning light that penetrated through the paper window, he could barely see her face clearly. When he saw that her lips were slightly red and swollen, her shoulders that were exposed outside the brocade quilt were dotted with hickeys and finger marks. He suddenly blushed. Wei Si raised his hand and pulled up the brocade quilt to cover the traces that would provoke wild and fanciful thoughts. They slept facing each other and soon fell asleep. When Jiang Pengji woke up, it was almost 1:45 in the afternoon. Wei Si was still sound asleep. Jiang Pengji did not wake him. She reached out and grabbed the clothes that were scattered beside the bed and casually draped them over her shoulders. Perhaps because of the loud noise, Wei Si woke up not long after. He saw the back of Jiang Pengji sitting beside the bed and dressing. "Aren't you going to sleep a little longer?" Jiang Pengji asked. Wei Si coughed and said, "I should ask someone to prepare something. If the Lord goes out like this, I'm afraid the servants in the residence will know." He was not a person who liked to treat himself harshly. Not only was there a bathtub in the residence, but there was also a specialized bathroom. To put it bluntly, it was a relatively large hot spring pool. In winter, one could soak in the hot spring while drinking a few drinks and looking at the scenery of the courtyard outside the window. It was comfortable and enjoyable. Jiang Pengji lay lazily beside the bathtub with her eyes half closed. The steam made her skin fair and rosy. It made one's blood boil. Wei Si wanted to wash up in the bathtub behind the screen. He had just moved half a step when she opened her eyes. There was a hint of threat in her eyes. Seeing that Wei Si had stopped, Jiang Pengji closed her eyes lazily and muttered, "My hair is wet. It's uncomfortable." After a while, she realized that Wei Si had brought a wooden basin filled with clean hot water. He scooped up her long hair from the water. Jiang Pengji would trim her hair regularly, but her hair was still very long. It took some time and effort to wash it. When she woke up in a daze, she found herself leaning on Wei Si's knee. Her long hair was washed clean, and a pair of slender hands was carefully wiping her damp hair with a dry cloth. Seeing that she had woken up, Wei Si coiled up her long hair and fixed it with a hairpin. Jiang Pengji smiled as she extended her hand and slid it from his shoulder to his neck. Her fingertips hooked onto his Adam's apple. "You've already washed my hair. Why don't you pack my bath too? This shouldn't be considered overstepping my boundaries, right?" Wei Si, by the time the two of them were done fooling around, an hour had already passed. Jiang Pengji took the clothes off the hanger and compared them. She realized that the clothes were made according to her body shape. Zixiao is really a classic example of one who says one thing but means another. Jiang Pengji leaned on the screen and peeked at Wei Si putting on the clothes one by one. Her gaze was filled with undisguised admiration. "What's wrong with Si? How can there be undergarments suitable for me in your residence? There are no women in your residence. If they weren't prepared for me, were they prepared for yourself?" Jiang Pengji smiled and squinted her eyes. "If this isn't one thing, then what is? Si is also a man. How can I not be moved by a woman I admire?" Wei Si was silent for a while before he spoke. "Moreover, my lord often stays in the residence. I have to prepare a few sets of clothes in case of emergencies. If I can make my lord smile like this, then my preparations won't be in vain." Jiang Pengji complained, "I keep feeling that Zixiao has unlocked an incredible seal. He was much bolder than before. He didn't look so restrained. Was he ready to let go of himself?" It turned out that only Jiang Pengji could let go of herself. Wei Si was still the same Wei Si. A thick layer of snow hung on the short pine tree in the courtyard. Jiang Pengji sat by the window. There was a fire in the stove next to her, so she didn't feel cold. Wei Si asked the kitchen to prepare a sumptuous meal and warm wine. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Jiang Pengji's eyes were half closed. She folded her hands behind her head. Her black hair spread out like a waterfall. "I haven't been so free in a long time. Without official documents and worldly matters, I'm not used to it." "How did Zixiao spend his time before he became an official?" Jiang Pengji asked. "If he had nothing to do, it would be boring to sit around. Don't you think so?" Wei Si said, "Tea, wine, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting can kill time. Or I can go out to visit friends and attend banquets." Jiang Pengji said, "It sounds quite rich. I don't think I've heard Zixiao play the zither." Wei Si took a zither and burned some incense to clean his hands. He sat upright and said, "What would you like to hear, my lord?" You can even play some songs? Jiang Pengji asked with interest. How about a phoenix looking for a phoenix? Wei Si's cheeks were slightly red, but he did not object. The music was lingering, charming, and refreshing. Even if Jiang Pengji did not understand music, she could feel the burning emotions conveyed by the music. There's a beauty that I can't forget when I see her. Not seeing her for a day, I go crazy thinking about her. If there's such a beauty in the world, she must look like Zixiao. Jiang Pengji did not know how to play the zither, but she had a photographic memory and could recite. Not only could she recite, but she also knew how to flirt with Wei Si. Wei Si could not help but laugh. He chose a few ancient songs with fresh and lively rhythms. Jiang Pengji squinted her eyes for a while and suddenly remembered what was missing. She had forgotten to turn on the streaming room today. I hope there isn't an explosion over there, she muttered with a smile and casually turned on the streaming room. There isn't an explosion? That's impossible. Jiang Pengji skipped work. Various popular platforms were paralyzed again. The programmers sacrificed their bosses and colleagues to heaven one after another, but they still could not save the servers that had crashed. It was said that many programmers had secretly begun to worship Jiang Pengji. They did not ask for anything else. They only hoped that she would diligently and earnestly stream every day. Even if she had to stop streaming for a few days, she would inform them in advance. They really could not take it if she did it every few days. 5 million salted fish flooded in quickly. In a second, there was no space left. All kinds of bullet screens flooded towards Jiang Pengji. Through the bullet screens, Jiang Pengji could also feel the salted fish's worry, fear, and pitiful emotions. Until a certain salted fish found something fishy. Yuzatong, streamer, your neck, was bitten by a bug. She bit her handkerchief and cried. Tell me, this isn't a hickey, right? Jiang Pengji took out a bronze mirror and looked at it. She raised her eyebrows slightly, but she did not hide it. They were all adults. Straightforward people did not resort to insinuations. Chapter 1434. Lao Si Julianming. Look at the host. You look so full. I have an ominous feeling, Li Zi Luluo. I find that the streamer's current look is very similar to the lazy look of my cat master after eating and drinking. Liang Feng Qinhuan. I'm so envious that the streamer has a bound BGM. Zixiao's hands look so good when he plays the zither. Wandering Feathershong. Let me tell you guys a piece of unfortunate news. When I zoomed in on the screenshot just now, Samiran also had a strawberry on her neck. Hanyan Ningming. Host, be honest. Did you bully Zixiao QAQ? Jiang Pengji waited for them to finish chattering and leisurely added another blow. Host V, what else? There is naturally a reason why he started the live broadcast so late today. The group of salted fishes suffered critical damage. Heartache, falling out of love twice in one day. The goddess that he admired and the Prince Charming that he liked had an affair. The salted fishes turned their grief and indignation into motivation, and a huge amount of resentment surged through the network, instantly crashing the servers that had just stabilized with great difficulty. Programmer Ape, the coder Ape, and the boss, who had been sacrificed to the heavens, died with everlasting regret. Jiang Pengji was about to mock him mercilessly when her private chat rang. The system notified her that she had not received an email. What did the old general send her this time? Jiang Pengji felt that she was playing the traveling frog version of the old chief, because he would bring her local specialties from different places every few days. Of course, she didn't dare to let the other party know about this. Otherwise, who would buy for her in the future? This ancestor had to be worshipped. She went to the Honeycomb Express storage cabinet and found some strange medicines with strange names inside. Your Abba. I've been to a new place for the past 2 days. I'm safe now. Don't worry. I've collected some local specialties that are suitable for you. Jiang Xiaojiu, the child beside you is still young. No matter what, you are still an adult. Be more considerate. Jiang Pengji was silent for a while and asked, what are local specialties for? Your Abba. It nourishes yin and the kidneys, nourishes and strengthens yang. Jiang Pengji asked, do I need that? Your Abba. Your underage boyfriend needs it. I don't trust you anymore, you beast of a man. If I don't make up for it, what if you squeeze me dry when you're in the mood one day? After all, he's just an ordinary person. What about you? Army commander? Jiang Pengji was speechless. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. She had already explained that Zixiao was an adult. Your friend, your father, is online. Jiang Pengji looked at the profile picture with the darkened name and almost exploded. Did she look like a beast who did not know how to control herself? At this moment, Salted Fish in the live stream room seemed to be sending her red bean rice emojis. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Don't use a joke that I don't understand. According to Jiang Pengji's understanding of the group of salted fish, there must be a meaning to this joke. Although there was no wedding and no announcement, there was a ring, a vows, and a honeymoon. It was rare for Jiang Pengji to be muddle-headed. She used the excuse of patrolling everywhere as an excuse to drag Wei Ci out of the house for a stroll and sightseeing, leave on the spur of the moment, and return to the fullest. In the blink of an eye, it was the 7th day of the Lunar New Year. The markets resumed their normal operations. Jiang Pengji's leisurely time had come to an end. From the first day of the Lunar New Year to the 7th day of the Lunar New Year, Qiguan Rang and the others were either visiting their relatives and friends or attending banquets. Almost no one noticed that their lord had disconnected. No, he should say that he knew, but he pretended not to know. On the first day of work, Feng Zhen leaned over to Wei Ci's side and said, "You've worked hard." Wei Ci was stunned and asked in confusion, "What?" Feng Zhen teased, "If I didn't have the courage to be filial and sacrifice myself to feed the tiger, how could I have such a long holiday? I'm so tired that my bones are stiff." "You!" Wei Ci almost lost his temper. Feng Zhen hurriedly pressed down on his shoulder and laughed. "If you don't want people to know, why don't you cover your neck?" Wei Ci gritted his teeth and said, "It's really the nature of a prodigal son." As he spoke, he couldn't help but tighten his clothes. Little did he know that there were no marks on his neck. Feng Zhen was just bluffing. Moreover, so what if there were marks on a man's body? At most, he would say that he was a romantic. However, Wei Ci was serious and couldn't help but tease him. He didn't know why the Lord liked such a dull and boring man so much. Women's thoughts were indeed hard to understand. As they spoke, Qiguan Rang walked over quietly like a cat. "The Lord has summoned us urgently." Feng Zhen and Wei Ci's expressions turned solemn. They hurriedly got up, tidied their clothes, and rushed to the meeting hall. "What happened?" Wei Ci asked casually. Qiguan Rang said expressionlessly, "The 4 factions of Nanman have been annihilated." Wei Ci stopped in his tracks and almost lost his footing. He instinctively grabbed Qiguan Rang's arm. "What?" Qiguan Rang repeated. "There was an urgent secret letter just now. The Nanxing Alliance army defeated the 4 factions of Nanman. The army marched straight into the heart of the 4 factions of Nanman and captured more than 1 million captives. According to the letter, the Nanxing Alliance army discussed and decided to annihilate the entire tribe. Regardless of gender or age, not a single person was left alive. The Nanxing Alliance army is really ruthless. It took them several days to kill all the barbarians." Wei Ci felt a chill run down his spine. He said in a hoarse voice, "Nanxing, how could they make such a stupid move?" According to his calculations, there were still many years before Shui used up all his resources to annihilate the 4 factions of Nanman in his previous life. In his previous life, he massacred more than 638,000 people from the 4 factions of Nanman. Regardless of whether they were men, women, the elderly, children, or infants waiting to be fed, almost no one survived. In this life, it was even more tragic. There were more than 1 million of them. Was a Nanxing Alliance army crazy? The 4 factions of Nanman had extraordinary combat power. There were more than 1 million of them. How could they let the Alliance army win so easily? Qiguan Rang said, "The heavens did not grant them their wish." An extremely terrifying epidemic broke out in the territory of Nanman. There were countless deaths and injuries. There was not even 1/10 of the young fighting power left. Whether it was Qiguan Rang or Wei Ci, they did not think that this epidemic was deliberately planned by someone. The strong bodies of the Nanman tribesmen could not withstand the torment of the epidemic. At first, they could still hold on, but as time went on, there were countless deaths and injuries. It was said that at its worst, more than 10,000 young men died in a day. Wei I asked, epidemic? What about the Alliance Army? When the two armies fought, the four factions of Nanman suffered. There was no reason for the Alliance Army to stay out of it. The Alliance Army also suffered casualties, but the situation was much better than the four factions of Nanman. Qiguan Rang said, the four factions of Nanman were filled with miasma, and the temperature was hot and humid. It was not conducive to recuperation, so the epidemic was naturally more serious. At least the Alliance Army had medicinal herbs and military doctors. The illness could be controlled. Wei was so shocked that his mind went blank. It was as if he had been pulled back to the scene of his previous life. More than 638,000 people died in one place. Some were buried alive, and some were beheaded. It was as if the entire sky was dyed red by their blood. People were not plants, and their hearts were not made of stone. One could imagine Wei Si's feelings at that time. Fengzhen frowned and asked, why did my lord summon us? Qiguan Rang laughed coldly and asked, the four factions of Nanman were destroyed. Can we give Nanxing a chance to breathe? Chapter 1435. When Qiguan Rang and the other two arrived at the meeting hall, most of the people had already arrived. The three of them saluted and took their respective seats. Wei was still absent-minded, his face slightly pale. Zhang Pengji frowned slightly. If there was nothing important, Wei Si's sense of responsibility would not be distracted in an official setting. She looked around and confirmed that all her confidants were present. Zhang Pengji then cleared her throat and told them the reason for the emergency meeting. We received an urgent secret letter from Nanxing this morning. The Alliance Army of Nanxing has conquered the hinterlands of the four tribes and captured more than 1 million people. After a discussion among the Alliance's feudal lords, they unanimously agreed to massacre the barbarians of the four tribes. Zhang Pengji's gaze was calm, as if she was talking about an insignificant matter. Everyone had heard rumors before they came, but when they heard the news from Zhang Pengji, even Yang Si and the others were visibly moved. In troubled times, human lives were like grass. People would always die in war. They were mentally prepared, but to massacre 1 million people at once, Li Yun probed. 1 million strong young men? Zhang Pengji said impatiently. The population of the four tribes of Nanman is small. After 10 years of chaos, how can there be 1 million strong young men? If there were 1 million strong young men, they would have wiped out the Alliance Army of Nanxing long ago. Most of the 1 million people are elderly, women, children, and babies. Perhaps the women's fetuses are also included. The Alliance Army of Nanxing is venting their hatred for the annihilation of their country. They are really ruthless. The four tribes of Nanman have been fighting for years. The depletion of the young men could not keep up with the speed of replenishment. In addition to the epidemic last year, their combat power was seriously affected. If the weather had not turned cold soon after the outbreak of the epidemic, which more or less suppressed the epidemic, more people would have died from the epidemic. In ancient times, the medical standards were poor, hygiene awareness was poor, and medical resources were lacking. Once the epidemic broke out, the casualties would be more tragic than the earthquake in Shanjing. Was it a lie to say that 9 out of 10 rooms were empty? According to Zhang Pengji's knowledge, there were a few large-scale epidemics in this era that affected a wide area. The number of deaths and injuries from each epidemic was in the millions. One must know that the entire population of Dongqing was only slightly more than 20 million. Qiguan Rang frowned and said, even if it's the hatred for the annihilation of the country, the method of massacring the entire tribe is really ruthless. Hundreds of years ago, wars and massacres were common, but with the passage of time, massacres were no longer common. No one would say how many people were killed during a war, but after many victories, very few people would continue to kill captives unless they ran out of rations. Under normal circumstances, the victorious side would demote the defeated captives into slavery and sell them as human slaves or use them as cheap labor. Most of the captives mentioned above referred to soldiers who had participated in the war but had been defeated. However, the captives that the Nansheng alliance had slaughtered were mostly the elderly, the weak, women, and children. Don't say who is ruthless. In my opinion, the Nansheng alliance and the four factions of Nanman are jackals of the same tribe. Jiang Pengji snorted and said, when the four factions of Nanman massacred the people of Nansheng, I didn't see them show any mercy. Similarly, in the early days of Nansheng's establishment, in order to prevent Nanman from rebelling, they captured hundreds of thousands of Nanman tribesmen to be forced into servitude as soldiers. More than 200,000 died of exhaustion and in battle. Nansheng also claimed to be the suzerain of the four tribes of Nanman. They used their powerful troops to force the other side to pay tribute. They collected 9 out of 10 taxes and sent troops to suppress them several times. They slaughtered no less than 100,000 Nanman people. This is all bad debt. In the early days of Nansheng's establishment, how many gentry relied on the blood of the four tribes of Nanman to enrich their own pockets? They forcibly captured them as slaves and gave them the least amount of food to do the heaviest work. They didn't treat them as humans, but as beasts that could talk. Wasn't the hatred that the four tribes of Nanman had for Nansheng also forced out by these people? After the four tribes of Nanman became powerful, they destroyed Nansheng. The feudal lords of Nansheng then joined forces to counterattack Nanman until they decided to slaughter millions of people and exterminate their entire tribe. I don't mind exterminating an entire tribe, but don't use the righteous banner of revenge. Do you really think that you are so clean? Among the feudal lords of Nansheng's alliance, how many of their ancestors had enjoyed the sweetness of the blood of the four tribes of Nanman? Jiang Pengji felt that this group of people was also interesting. They were very good at using double standards. War was war. Murder was murder. Extermination of an entire tribe was extermination of an entire tribe. Stop finding messy excuses to whitewash peace. Those who kill should be prepared to be killed. Seeing that Jiang Pengji's words were getting more and more out of line, Qiguan Rang and Wei Ci coughed in unison. The two of them looked at each other from a distance and quickly looked away. Jiang Pengji rubbed her head. She had no choice but to stop talking and deal with the content vaguely. It wasn't that she was afraid. It was just that the trivial matter between Nansheng and Nanman was not the main topic of today's discussion. There was no need to waste time. Nansheng is our neighbor, and Zhangzhou is ruled by Yang Tao, the feudal lord of Nansheng. If Yang Tao is ambitious, Zhe, Hu, and Hu counties will be easily lost without the protection of natural barriers. My lord has to be on guard. Yang seized it up and changed the topic. If Nansheng is not threatened by external aggression, it will only take 3 to 5 years of recuperation to recover its strength. When that time comes, it will become a great threat. In my opinion, we need to make countermeasures as soon as possible. This wasn't taking advantage of the situation, it was taking preventive measures. Who asked Yang Tao to occupy Zhangzhou? Zhangzhou was a great hidden danger to Zhe County, Hu County, and Hu County, because there are no safe natural barriers. If Yang Tao sent his troops from Zhangzhou, it would be extremely difficult to defend these 3 places. Who would feel at ease? Unfortunately, the 3 counties were more fertile places under Jiang Pengji's rule. Hu County was a large producer of grain. Once it was lost, the loss could be said to be fatal. Anyway, Nansheng had already destroyed Nanman. If Jiang Pengji chose this time to send her troops, the world could not blame her. Jing Rong's worries are exactly what I'm worried about, Jiang Pengji said. Regarding this, do you have any opinions? Even if Jiang Pengji's god-slaying sword was already unbearably thirsty, she still had to go through the necessary procedures. War was not something that could be fought on a whim. Before fighting, she had to rack her brains to find a proper excuse. She could not possibly say, I suspect that Yang Tao will beat me in the future, so I want to strangle him now. Could she? She and Yang Tao were not considered friends, but they were not enemies either. They had even worked together twice. It seemed like there was no reason for them to have a conflict. Jiang Pengji had an excuse, but she needed her subordinates to cooperate with her to dig up old scores. Feng Zhen was quick-witted and understood. An excuse to start a war? Coincidentally, there was one. Last year, when his lord dealt with Madame Tao played a suffocating trick in an attempt to incur enmity between her and Yang Tao. However, this matter was suppressed by his lord. Yang Tao was also busy with the battlefield in Nansheng, so he did not give any response. Feng Zhen's mood changed, and he immediately had an idea. While Jiang Pengji was sharpening her sword, Yang Tao, who was far away in Nansheng, was completely unaware. Not only that, but he had also fallen slightly ill. After a few days, he had lost a lot of weight. As Yang Tao's close friend, Yinlin naturally knew where the root of the illness was. To put it bluntly, Yang Tao was still too kind. Chapter 1436. Yang Tao had a good foundation. After a few days of careful care, he recovered, but he still seemed to be in low spirits. At this time, the alliance held a banquet and invited Yang Tao. Unable to resist, Yang Tao had no choice but to attend. At the banquet, everyone toasted and smiled happily, as if they had finally gotten rid of a heavy burden. The 4 tribes of Nanman, which had caused the destruction of Nansheng, were finally exterminated. But Yang Tao didn't know what to eat. He didn't touch the food on the table and only took a few sips of sake. His face was pale. Yinlin could only sigh, but he couldn't console him on this occasion. And Shui had completely turned over a new leaf. Thanks to Hua Yuan's secret plan, his forces were the most well-preserved. Even when the plague was rampant, they didn't suffer many losses. The other vassal forces suffered heavy losses and naturally didn't have the right to compete with Shui. They could only feign civility. Naturally, Shui became the leader of the alliance army. He had the greatest right to speak, becoming the alliance leader in name only. After the banquet began, he praised everyone's contributions as usual. The other vassals smiled and echoed, occasionally praising Shui. Of course, it didn't matter if they thought so or not. Shui was satisfied with everyone's reaction. The hatred and resentment that had accumulated over the years disappeared with the extermination of the 4 tribes of Nanman. Nanman was the mountain that had been weighing on his heart. Now that this mountain had been overturned, he could finally relax. Listening to the joyful songs and praises, Yang Tao's hand that was holding the wine cup tightened slightly, and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Yinlin and Yang Tao grew up together and naturally knew each other's temperament. He quickly tugged at Yang Tao's sleeve, his eyes full of disapproval. Yang Tao always listened to his best friend. He could only bear with it. In anger, he raised his chin and downed the wine in the bottle. Seeing this, Yinlin heaved a sigh of relief. He motioned for the maid to fill up Yang Tao's wine bottle. In this situation, it was better to just get Yang Tao drunk. Unexpectedly, Shui didn't have any tacit understanding. Seeing Yang Tao downing cup after cup, he smiled and raised his cup. Here, I would like to propose a toast to you. If you hadn't trained your troops well and fought bravely, we wouldn't have been able to conquer Nanman so easily. Then, Shui's strategist, Hua Yuan, also smiled and flattered him. Hearing Hua Yuan's words, Yang Tao, who had been drinking his sorrows, exploded like a firecracker. He snorted coldly and suddenly threw the golden bronze wine goblet at Hua Yuan. If Hua Yuan had not subconsciously tilted his head to avoid it, the wine goblet would have definitely smashed into his face. Everyone was startled by this turn of events. The dancers in the camp also stopped and trembled. With a clang, the wine goblet fell to the ground and made a huge noise. Hua Yuan was able to avoid the wine bottle, but the sake in the wine bottle was not so easy to avoid. Hua Yuan's wine was splashed. Yang Tao stood up angrily, gritted his teeth, and said, "What qualifications do you have to mention, my father? You've insulted his wisdom." The crowd was stunned again. Hua Yuan had not said anything bad about Yang Jian just now. Instead, he had praised Yang Jian for teaching his son well. Like father, like son. Why was Yang Tao so angry? Hua Yuan raised his hand to wipe the wine off his face. He stood up and bowed in apology, but Yang Tao did not appreciate it at all, and Shui felt a little embarrassed, but he had to intervene. He muttered to himself, "What's wrong with Yang Tao?" Yang Tao did not give Shui any face. He mocked Hua Yuan. "I'm ashamed to be associated with animals." And Shui's face turned green when he heard this. Hua Yuan was his right-hand man. What did Yang Tao mean by calling him an animal in front of him? Hua Yuan did not get angry. Instead, his lips curled into a mocking smile. Yin Lin's heart sank when he saw this. Yang Tao flicked his sleeves and left. Yin Lin followed closely behind, leaving behind a group of confused vassals. Outside the tent, a cold wind blew, cooling his burning chest a little. His anger also subsided a little. "My lord!" Yin Lin stood behind him and called out softly. Yang Tao's face paled. He lowered his head and said dejectedly, "Xiaoyang, do you think I did something wrong?" "I was impulsive," Yin Lin said calmly. "You are a noble vassal. Why did you have to confront a despicable person like Hua Yuan?" Yang Tao pursed his lips and said stubbornly, "I couldn't control my anger when I heard him speak." Yin Lin asked him, "Are you happy now, my lord?" Yang Tao said, "Xiaoyang, let's rest for a few days and leave. I don't want to stay in this foul place any longer." Yin Lin sighed. "If we leave now, we will suffer great losses. War was a money-burning job. When could they make money? When could they divide the spoils of war?" The 4 tribes of Nanman had destroyed Nanshan. They had looted and killed along the way. Over the years, they had looted countless treasures. If they left now, they would be giving up on the spoils that Yang Tao deserved. Yang Tao knew that he was being impulsive. He said, "But I don't want to see these people's faces anymore." Yin Lin said, "If that's the case, then you can continue to claim that you are sick. I will take care of the rest." Yin Lin couldn't blame his friend for being so stubborn. He didn't like Hua Yuan either. The alliance had conquered the 4 tribes of Nanman and captured millions of people. These were all spoils of war. They could divide them up after a while. They didn't expect Hua Yuan to stand up and make a speech, which aroused the hatred of the alliance towards Nanman. He suggested to exterminate the 4 tribes of Nanman. And Shui strongly supported it. Many of the wavering feudal lords were also won over. Only Yang Tao insisted on opposing it. Kill what? Killing the prisoners of war was one thing, but why kill the old, weak, sick, and disabled? However, Yang Tao was from Dongqing. He didn't have much say in the alliance, so he couldn't stop it. If that was the case, Yang Tao wouldn't be so disgusted with Hua Yuan, who asked Hua Yuan to do 2 heinous things. Hua Yuan ordered his men to gather the babies of Nanman, throw them to death, and strangle them one by one. How much hatred and resentment did they have? The other matter was also the root cause of Yang Tao's small illness, which was also the knot in his heart. The alliance took several days to conquer the 4 tribes of Nanman and captured millions of people of all ages. Among the captives, there were men and women, old and young. Other than the Nanman people, there were also tens of thousands of Nanxing women. These women were captured by the 4 tribes of Nanman to be used as captives to vent their lust and reproduce. These women suffered inhumane torture here. Those who were in better health gave birth to 1 child after another. Those who were in poor health didn't even last a month or 2. Many even died in childbirth. When the alliance arrived, many of the women were pregnant. Hearing that the alliance had arrived, they cried tears of joy. Who knew that what awaited them was another nightmare? The alliance ordered the slaughter of Nanman. The children in their wombs naturally belonged to Nanman. What should we do with them? Hua Yuan, or Gulin, sneered and said, "Take them down. If we can't, cut them open and take them out." There were no abortion pills in the army. Chapter 1437. Whenever I recall the scene that day, I really want to kill Hua Yuan with a single slash. Yang Tao had an open and candid personality, and it was very rare for him to truly hate someone. Hua Yuan's actions made him make an exception. Don't you think so too? Yang Tao was silent for a while, then said, "There's something I still can't figure out." Yin Lin asked, "What is it?" Yang Tao said, "The 4 factions of Nanman have committed heinous crimes. This is an undeniable fact. I can understand that Hua Yuan hates Nan Man. The only thing that couldn't be understood was that, looking at his past experience, although Hua Yuan had his ups and downs, it was not to the extent of forming such a deep hatred with the Southern man. How innocent were those women who were captured by the Southern man? Although the babies in their wombs are of barbarian blood, the mother is from Nansheng. Yang Tao could understand if Shui insisted on slaughtering the 4 factions of Nan Man. This was because Shui's parents, wife, and children had all died tragically under the butcher knives of the southern barbarians. That kind of hatred was something that outsiders could not understand. In order to gather troops for revenge, Shui had suffered a lot in Dongqing. It was normal for him to want nothing more than to exterminate the southern barbarians. Where was Hua Yuan? According to Yang Tao's investigation, Hua Yuan's hatred for the South barbarians was exaggerated. It was really puzzling. Why were they abducted and raped by the 4 factions of Nan Man? Yang Tao clenched his fists and gritted his teeth in anger. Isn't it because the men of Nansheng are useless and stupid? If it weren't for the royal families in action and the aristocrats, eunuchs, and relatives playing for power, these women wouldn't have ended up like this. If it weren't for the fact that these people couldn't defend their country well, these women wouldn't have to suffer such inhumane torture. It wasn't easy for them to escape, but Hua Yuan and the others used the excuse that the children in their wombs were leftover evildoers to force an abortion. It's really infuriating. Even an outsider like Yang Tao couldn't stand it anymore. Taking 10,000 steps back, if the Flower Abyss really couldn't tolerate people of the southern barbarian bloodline, why couldn't they deal with them after they gave birth? If she forced an abortion, the child in her womb would definitely die, and the mother would not be able to survive either. The barbarians of the 4 factions of Nan Man deserved to die, but how innocent were these women? Every time Yang Tao recalled the situation that day, he always felt that something was stuck in his heart, making him feel uncomfortable all over. Yin Lin said thoughtfully, "We'll leave with our troops once we're done with our business." Yang Tao nodded. He was no longer a child. He couldn't give up the spoils of war that the entire army had risked their lives for just because of one person's temper. "Xiao Yang, I'm a little worried about Xiao Yin," Yang Tao said. "Hua Yuan and Xiao Yin don't get along. Hua Yuan is so violent. I'm worried." Lu Zheng and Hua Yuan were both advisors under Shui's command. Even if their political views differed, Hua Yuan wouldn't go so far as to kill them. Yin Lin laughed. "No matter what, Lu Zheng is Master Yuanjing's favorite student. You don't have to worry about him, my lord." Yang Tao mumbled, "I also know that Xiaoyin is Master Yuanjing's disciple, but Hua Yuan is too strange. I'm a little worried." Come to think of it, Yang Tao had once encountered Hua Yuan's murderous intent towards Lu Zheng. If Yang Tao had not appeared at that time, who knew what Hua Yuan would have done? Yin Lin smiled. "If you're really worried, why don't you find a chance to remind Lu Zheng so that he can take precautions?" Yang Tao said helplessly, "I reminded Xiaoyin earlier, but I'm afraid Xiaoyin didn't take it to heart." This time, it was Yin Lin's turn to feel helpless. Yang Tao reminding Lu Zheng to be wary of Hua Yuan was seen as sowing discord in the eyes of outsiders. It would be strange if Hua Yuan would take the warning to heart. Little did they know that Lu Zheng had already fallen for Yang Tao's tricks. This matter had to start from when the alliance conquered the southern barbarians. And Shui and Hua Yuan were firm supporters of exterminating the tribe. Naturally, Lu Zheng wouldn't agree. Didn't they know that captives were considered spoils of war? The hidden value of captives was far more valuable than visible spoils of war. Why did they have to kill them all? Lu Zheng disagreed 1,000 times over. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Hua Yuan. It would be a success as long as he could convince his lord in Shui. Unfortunately, Lu Zheng tried to persuade Shui, but Shui still wouldn't budge. They had to be exterminated. "Xiaoyin, do you know the pain of having your country destroyed and your family destroyed? There's no room for negotiation. The 4 tribes of southern barbarians are a bunch of uncivilized barbarians. Keeping them alive will only bring us great trouble." And Shui was born into an aristocratic family, so he naturally believed in bloodlines. The evil of the 4 tribes of southern barbarians was innate. If he let the captives go, they would definitely come back. It was better to eliminate them once and for all. To this day, Shui still remembered how those barbarians had barged into his house, how they had raped his wife and daughter to death. Even his infant son, who was still in swaddling clothes, had not been able to escape. Instead, he had been thrown to the ground and trampled on by the beasts. His elderly parents had lost their dignity, thrown to the ground by the hair, and dragged to their deaths. His wife, concubines, and servants, none of them had been spared. The first half of Shui's life was comfortable and happy, but when disaster struck, he would suffer. Lu Zheng's motive was profit. After weighing the pros and cons, he chose to keep the captives. Shui knew what he was thinking. However, Shui didn't need these benefits. He only wanted the 4 tribes of southern barbarians to pay the heaviest price for their bloody deeds. Exterminating the southern barbarians was Shui's motivation for living. It was also an important mission that he had to complete for the rest of his life. No one could persuade him otherwise. Therefore, Shui stood his ground and handed the extermination of the tribe to Hua Yuan. He knew that Hua Yuan was of the same mind as him. Lu Zheng was extremely disappointed. He didn't pay attention to his surroundings on his way back. Halfway there, a black shadow suddenly dragged him into a nearby tent. This person was terrifyingly strong. No matter how Lu Zheng struggled, he couldn't break free from the other party's grip. The other party covered his mouth and nose with one hand and strangled his neck with the other. The force was so strong that it seemed like it was going to break his neck. Lu Zheng struggled with all his might and finally saw the person's face. It was Hua Yuan. Realizing this, Lu Zheng struggled even more violently. He used all his strength to hook the brazier in the tent with the tip of his foot. The noise attracted the patrolling soldiers. What happened? The soldier was about to open the tent to check when Hua Yuan's angry and sinister voice shouted at the soldier to leave. Lu Zheng took the opportunity to push Hua Yuan's hand away. He rolled to the side of the tent and took out a large knife. His chest heaved violently. You? Who are you? Lu Zheng coughed twice. The lack of oxygen and suffocation made his limbs weak. His head swelled and hurt. But he didn't dare to let his guard down. Instead, he pointed the tip of his knife at Hua Yuan, afraid that this lunatic would try to kill him again in the next second. Yes, Lu Zheng was very sure that Hua Yuan had really wanted to kill him just now. Seeing this, Hua Yuan revealed a sinister and cold smile. Whether it was his expression or temperament, he was very different from the Hua Yuan that Lu Zheng knew. Could it be this lunatic was acting up again? Chapter 1438. Hua Yuan's voice was trembling and crazed. How could he still maintain his usual calm demeanor? Lu Zheng's eyes were red from the pinching, and he asked again, unwilling to give up. What kind of monster are you? You're not Hua Yuan. This was too strange. This was scarier than being possessed. Even though they knew that Hua Yuan was crazy, he had been acting normally for a long time, and no one took it seriously. They never expected that Hua Yuan would want someone's life the moment he acted up. Of course I'm not that idiot. Hua Yuan sneered. I'm Galin, the son of the former tiger General Guchun. Tiger General Guchun? Lu Zheng was stunned. He couldn't remember who this person was. He didn't know much about Nansheng. It was limited to the current feudal lords and the history of their ancestors. Guchun was a figure before Nansheng was destroyed. Because the cause of his death was taboo, almost no one mentioned his name. I'm warning you again, don't stop me. Otherwise, I don't mind making Shui lose his right-hand man. Lu Zheng's eyes widened and his nerves tightened. What's so good about killing the southern man captives? Just for revenge? This person had no sense of the big picture. In reality, Galin didn't have that. He didn't care about Shui at all. To Galin, who was born in a military family, Shui was an ignorant and incompetent son of a noble family. It didn't matter to him whether Shui lived or died. He only wanted revenge. What else? Galin sneered. If it wasn't for revenge, why would I put up with you idiots? You have a grudge against the southern man? Lu Zheng didn't know about the split personality. This Galin was just a figment of Hua Yuan's imagination. He thought Galin's soul had possessed him. Of course there's a grudge, and it's a blood feud. Galin sneered. You're lucky this time. If you interfere again, I guarantee you won't even know how you die. Don't even think about getting that useless Enchui to help you. His hatred for the southern man runs deep. Lu Zheng's lips turned pale in fear. He had seen a ghost in broad daylight. After Galin had left for a while, Lu Zheng finally loosened his grip on his saber. The saber fell to the ground with a clang. Among the allied forces, not everyone wanted the southern barbarians to be exterminated, but it was undeniable that they were all afraid of the potential threat of the southern barbarians. In the past, Nanman was also suppressed by Nansheng to the point where they couldn't even lift their heads. They exploited them whenever they wanted and suppressed them whenever they wanted. They were as weak as chickens. Who would have expected that after a few decades, the four factions of Nanman would engulf the entire Nanxing land with a raging fire? The gates of the imperial capital were forcibly blasted open, the royal family was slaughtered, and almost no one was left alive in the city. It didn't matter if you were a noble aristocrat or a lowly child beggar. Under the butcher's knife of the southern barbarians, only a wronged soul was left. In troubled times, everyone was wronged. Even if their rationality told them that they should keep the captives and exploit them for their labor, their emotions were more inclined towards exterminating the entire clan. After destroying the southern barbarians, they would be completely free of worries. Hua Yuan fanned the flames, and Enchui's attitude was firm. Those who were on the fence also changed sides. No matter how much Lu Zheng objected, it was useless. Who would have thought that Hua Yuan, who was used to being so shameless, would actually be able to do something even more outrageous? When Lu Zheng heard that Hua Yuan didn't even spare a pregnant woman's fetus, he was completely enraged. Without another word, he picked up his sword and went to find Hua Yuan. His aggressive manner made it so that no one dared to stop him. Lu Zheng held the scabbard in his left hand and the long sword in his right. He waved away the soldiers who tried to stop him, pointed his sword at Hua Yuan, and scolded, "Are you still human? All the books you've read have gone to waste. You're practically a beast. Do you understand what a beast is?" Lu Zheng didn't come from a good background. He could usually restrain himself, but once he was enraged, all manners and self-restraint were thrown aside. Those women and children are so innocent. If you want to fight a war, then fight a war. If you want to kill a pregnant woman from your own country, then kill her. I really want to kick this person's head. Hua Yuan sneered and took a step back. Galin instantly switched online. They're not innocent if they're carrying a vile spawn. If you don't pull out the roots, there will be endless trouble in the future. Don't you even understand this? Lu Zheng was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. The person in front of him didn't have the slightest intention of repenting. Who gave him the courage to say that? These women are innocent women who were captured by Nanman. They're all women of Nansheng. They've already suffered misfortune. Not only do you have no compassion, but you're also so vicious. Lu Zheng was so angry that his hand holding the sword trembled. How are you any different from a beast by doing this? Galin laughed. Everyone has their own fate. Lu Zheng was completely enraged when he heard this. He raised his sword and prepared to kill. Let's see how I stab this bastard to death today. Everyone has their own fate. If that was really the case, then no one present had the right to destroy Nanman for revenge. They should accept their fate. The crowd didn't expect that Lu Zheng was determined to kill, so they couldn't react for a while. By the time they reacted, Galin had already snatched the sword from Lu Zheng's hand with his excellent skills. Lu Zheng had martial arts skills, but he was no match for Galin. Just when he thought that his life was over, Galin, who had revealed his murderous intent, suddenly shivered. All of you leave. I'll have a good talk with this person. The crowd looked at each other. Because of Hua Yuan's power, they had no choice but to leave the tent. Lu Zheng asked him with a sneer, "What tricks do you want to play now?" Hua Yuan raised his hand to touch his chest. In front of Lu Zheng, he lifted the hem of his shirt to touch his crotch. He looked as if he had been struck by lightning. Lu Zheng was speechless. Hua Yuan said, "You may not believe it. I'm Lu Shi. I don't know how I became like this. Lu Zheng was speechless. Only a ghost would believe this. Lin is a dead man. It's possible that his soul has possessed a living person. Lu Shi is a living person, and he's living well in Dongqing. Hua Yuan sighed and sat down on the mat. He said in confusion, "This isn't the first time. I woke up several times to find myself in a strange place. When I asked others, they all said that Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, is in Dongqing. If that's the case, who am I?" Lu Zheng looked at the person who wanted to kill him a few breaths ago, but now looked so kind. He immediately accepted his incompetence. He took a deep breath and said, "Don't pretend to be crazy." Hua Yuan sat on the mat casually, but he was not angry at Lu Zheng's offense. He smiled and said, "Every word is true. When did I pretend to be crazy? If you don't believe me, you can ask me and see if I'm Lu Shi." Lu Zheng saw that he was upright and had no intention of avoiding the question. He hesitated. Hua Yuan had lost his mind and was not clear-headed. After Lu Zheng asked a few questions and Hua Yuan answered fluently, Lu Zheng became even more uncertain. "Your master Yuanjing's disciple after all. When I was young, I also studied in Langyi for 3 years. We're half-brothers. For the sake of our old friendship, can you tell me what happened? Why did I suddenly become a man?" Chapter 1439. Hua Yuan's endless pestering finally made Lu Zheng relent. He took out the information he wanted. He said, "Now that you mention it, it's interesting. When I'm not awake, someone else takes over my place." Lu Zheng was speechless. How is it someone else taking over his place? The so-called Lu Shi in front of him was a dove himself. Without waiting for Lu Zheng to answer, he asked again, Are you sure that Lu Shi is in Dongqing?" Lu Zheng knew about Hua Yuan's unmentionable illness. In the past, he didn't mention it because of his illness, but now he was too lazy to hide it. "I've never heard of Lu Shi's illness. Your body is called Hua Yuan. This person has the unmentionable illness of unmentionable illness." Speaking of this, Lu Zheng revealed a somewhat malicious smile. He said, "People who are unmentionable illness are crazy. It's still up for debate who you really are." Lu Shi's expression turned solemn when he heard this. Obviously, he knew what unmentionable illness meant. Lu Zheng's words indirectly denied the meaning of his existence. "How can I not be Lu Shi? I'm indeed Lu Shi. I don't know why I become like this." His originally calm expression became stiff and unnatural for a moment. Seeing this, Lu Zheng took a small step back and put some distance between the two of them. He was afraid that Hua Yuan would act up again. Lu Shi looked dispirited, as if he was thinking about something. His eyes flickered nonstop. Lu Zheng asked him, "What tricks are you up to now?" Lu Shi's throat emitted a strange and heavy sound. He was like a trapped beast facing a desperate situation. His eyes were filled with red veins. He said word by word, "I'm Lu Shi." Lu Zheng couldn't be bothered to argue with this person. This lunatic Hua Yuan had really opened his eyes. He could put on a show in minutes without panting. "I'll never allow anyone to replace me." Every time he woke up, he was in a strange environment. He became a strange man, but others told him that Lu Shi was staying in Dongqing. How could that be possible? Someone must have secretly used sorcery to frame him. The one staying in Dongqing was the fake one. He had to find a way to regain his identity and let the world know that he was Lu Shi. Because Lu Zheng inadvertently revealed the truth, Lu Shi began to doubt himself. But his instinct to protect himself made him find a plausible excuse. Only then did his agitated emotions calm down. What Lu Zheng didn't know was that this Lu Shi in front of him was already imagining a big show. If he wanted to take back his identity, he had to stay awake and truly possess this body. He could not fall asleep from time to time and allow others to seize control. But how could this be achieved? Lu Shi thought for a moment, and a cruel sneer appeared on his lips. He had to think of a way to get rid of those outsiders who had taken over the nest. As long as he had a normal body, he would have a chance to uncover the truth. Lu Zheng had originally come to kill Hua Yuan, but after this interruption, he was like a deflated balloon. He picked up the sword on the ground and left. Hua Yuan was a complete lunatic. Sooner or later, he would suffer the consequences of his actions. He had been too excited just now. If he had really killed Hua Yuan, he would most likely have lost his life as well. Not worth it. Although the external threat of the Southman was gone, Nansheng did not become peaceful. Instead, it was filled with the aura of an impending storm. In the Alliance army, Shui had preserved his strength after the plague incident. Under Liu Zhang's planning and management, his strength continued to grow. On the other hand, the other feudal vassals had suffered heavy losses in the battle against the Southman. They had also lost many of their elites due to the plague. Soon, they were left far behind by Shui. The difference in strength between the feudal vassals was so great that Shui was not panicking. But those who had suffered heavy losses were on tenterhooks. After the Alliance army divided up the spoils of war, they all found excuses to bring their troops home. From Shui's attitude towards the Southman captives, it was obvious that he was not a good man. Hua Yuan, who was by his side, would also do anything to achieve his goals. If Shui suddenly turned against them, none of them would be able to escape. They would be safer back at the base camp. Yang Tao also chose to leave at this time. Before they set off, Yin Lin suddenly sighed with emotion. Shui is a wolf with wild ambitions. Yang Tao grabbed the reins and turned to look at Yin Lin. Will Shui send troops to ambush us again? He won't ambush us, but it's hard to say for the others. Yin Lin said confidently. The Alliance army destroyed the Southman. All the families contributed and lost countless soldiers. They are at their weakest right now, and Shui's troops are well preserved. He might not let go of this opportunity. Yang Tao was confused. Why? If Shui really had such ambitions, why would he allow the families to leave with their troops? Yin Lin sighed. His friend was indeed naive. Truly naive and sweet. Don't be stupid for free. Did he even need to think about this? If Shui attacks now, the families will gather their forces to defend themselves. One family may be weak, but with the combined strength of several families, Shui will lose. Yin Lin said, if the families return with their troops, they won't be able to take care of each other. It will be easier for Shui to take them down one by one. This way, not only could he eat away at the family strength, but he could also take back the spoils of war. Based on Yin Lin's understanding of Shui and the others, this was very likely. Yang Tao tensed up. So, we have to be prepared for a sneak attack. Yin Lin shook his head and said, Shui will attack the families, but he won't attack us. Yang Tao was surprised. Why? Yin Lin said, don't forget, Dongqing still has Lu Shi eyeing us. If our strength is damaged, who will defend him against Lu Shi? Shui doesn't have a good relationship with the other feudal lords. When the plague broke out, he only warned us secretly. What does that mean? Isn't it because he's worried that our strength will be damaged and we won't be able to defend against Lu Shi's army? It's not hard to guess what he's thinking. Yang Tao was speechless. Was it really not hard to guess? Why couldn't he guess at all? Lu Shi, Yang Tao said, he's defeated all the feudal lords in Dongqing. Does he still have the energy to send troops? Yin Lin said, he has to send troops even if he doesn't have the energy. Nansheng is at a low point. If he doesn't send troops now, it will be difficult for him to do so in the future. Yang Tao was silent. Lu Shi controls Dongqing and the northern borderline. How can we defend against him? Yang Tao's family was not weak, but compared to Zhang Pengji's, it was not enough. He lacked confidence. After the incident in Nanman, Yang Tao was sometimes a loss. A general success was built on thousands of dead bodies. It was good to win, but what if he lost? The thousands of soldiers who followed him would become piles of white bones. The land he had painstakingly managed would be invaded by the flames of war. The people who had finally settled down would become homeless again. That scene was unbearable to watch, and Yang Tao did not want to end up like that. Yin Lin was not worried. He said, let's form an alliance to defend against the enemy. An alliance? Who? Yang Tao's eyes were filled with these words. Chapter 1440. Yang Tao hesitated for a moment, feeling a little uncertain. Will the feudal lords of Zhongzhou be willing to get involved in this mess? He didn't know much about the situation in Zhongzhou and only knew a little. After all, Nansheng and Zhongzhou were very far apart. It would take at least half a year for information to travel back and forth. Why not? Yin Lin said confidently. Among the feudal lords of Zhongzhou, the Nie family is the most powerful. They occupy the most fertile states and counties. They have long become a thorn in other people's eyes. This chaotic world was like rowing a boat against the current. If one did not advance, they would be pushed back. If they did not fight, they would be waiting for death. Based on the Nie clan's current military strength, they could still choose to defend for 3 to 5 years. But what about after that? Lu Shi was full of ambition. Even if she didn't provoke her, she would still covet the meat in other people's bowls. The Nie clan offended Lu Shi in the past. Based on that person's temperament, I'm afraid he hasn't forgotten. Yin Lin was aware that the Nie family seemed to be thriving, but it was not a carefree life. If the Nie clan did not work hard to strengthen themselves, then they could only watch helplessly as the enemy grew stronger and swallowed them up. Yang Tao asked, "Is Lu Shi that wild?" He had a good impression of Jiang Pengji. Although she was a straightforward and open-minded tomboy, she did not bite anyone she saw. Yin Lin didn't think so. When the outsiders were afraid of the northern borderline, only this person was secretly conserving his strength and building up his strength, taking advantage of the critical moment when the northern borderline's vitality was greatly weakened to launch an expedition. From this incident, it could be seen that Jiang Pengji was not only unruly, but also decisive and warlike. She would not let go of any opportunity to attack the enemy. To her, Nansheng was something she had to get. If the weak Yang Tao wanted to survive, he had no choice but to form an alliance with Zhongzhou. If she wasn't wild, how could the northern borderline have lost? Yin Lin said, "She's the alpha wolf. There's no way she wouldn't be tempted by a bloody prey. If she misses this opportunity, when Nansheng recovers and Zhongzhou grows stronger, it will be difficult for her to expand again." The blood and tears of their predecessors told them that the path of multi-nation coexistence was not feasible, because human ambition was endless and the conflict between nations was unavoidable. Only by accomplishing true unification could the world be at peace. With Jiang Pengji's temperament, it was impossible for her to satisfy Dongqing. For Jiang Pengji, this was the best opportunity to get involved in Nansheng. To the Nie family of Zhongzhou, wasn't this a good opportunity to expand their territory and get their hands on Dongqing? Right now, Yang Tao could be said to be struggling for survival. If he made good use of this opportunity, he might be the Oriole and become the final winner. Yin Lin's expression was solemn, and his brows were furrowed with worry. Yang Tao knew that his friend was under a lot of pressure, so he didn't disturb him. Yin Lin was sure that there were no ambushers, so Yang Tao wasn't worried that Shui would set up an ambush ahead. However, even though Yang Tao was relieved, the other allied forces were not. Just as Yin Lin had said, Shui was very ambitious. He took advantage of this rare opportunity to defeat all the feudal vassals one by one. Even though Lu Zheng had a conflict with Shui and had a personal grudge with Hua Yuan, he was still a person who could distinguish between public and private interests. Based on the temperament of the feudal vassals and their subordinates, LV Zheng accurately predicted the route they would take back with their troops and set up an ambush in advance. The various feudal vassals also had capable people under them. They could see Shui's ambition and knew that this trip home would not be smooth, so they had long been on guard. The first few days were peaceful. They didn't even catch a single suspicious person, let alone an ambush. In the latter half of the journey, a few feudal vassals began to let their guard down because they were only a day or two away from their territory. They didn't expect an ambush to appear at this time and catch them off guard. That bastard Shui, he went back on his word. After marching for several days, the army was exhausted. They had finally found a place to rest for the night, but the enemy just had to choose this time to launch a sneak attack. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come alone. The speed at which the army collapsed was far faster than they had imagined. Only then did they realize that there was an enemy spy in the army. Send the letter quickly. Seeing that the army was collapsing, the feudal vassal made a prompt decision. He sent someone to deliver the news of Shui's sneak attack to his territory. It was obvious that the well-prepared enemy had a comprehensive plan to deal with it. After a night of fierce fighting, countless corpses were left behind. Their comrades who had fought side by side not long ago were either dead souls or captives. Things were far from over. According to Lu Zheng's arrangements, this group of people even stripped the captives of their armor and put it on themselves. Before the news reached the feudal vassals' territory, they used these clothes to disguise themselves as the soldiers of the feudal vassals, using this to trick the city gates. It would be best if they could trick the city gates, but if they couldn't, then they would attack by force. Relying on these methods, Shui's army reaped great rewards, and news of victory came one after another. The same situation played out in different places. Lu Zheng stood behind the scenes and controlled everything, but the successive victories didn't make him smile. Why? He seemed to have been targeted by a lunatic who had lost his mind. What a surprise. Beside him, Lu Shi, revealed a look of admiration. He said to Lu Zheng, "Although these feudal vassals aren't very successful and don't have a large territory, they are very cunning. Some of them knew that Shui might betray them and secretly change the route of the army. Even the planted spies couldn't get this information out, but you know the route of the army like the back of your hand. If it wasn't for his ability to foresee the future, then Lu Zheng was relying on his incomparably precise judgment and analysis skills." Lu Zheng's expression changed slightly. He knew that Hua Yuan's problem of losing his mind was getting worse. In the past, he would occasionally act like an ordinary person, but in the past 2 days, he frequently called himself Lu Shi, and the duration of his behavior was also increasing. Lu Zheng didn't know if this was a good or bad thing. In any case, that savage Galin didn't appear. It should be a good thing. When will Hua Yuan regain his senses? He's the Lord's right-hand man. He can't be absent at such a critical moment. Speaking of this, Lu Zheng got angry. He and Hua Yuan were like fire and water, and this was already known to everyone. Who would have thought that once Lu Shi appeared, he would come to his place every few days, making it seem like the two were on good terms. Even Shui became suspicious. Who wouldn't be suspicious? Not long ago, the two had been fighting and killing each other with swords, but now they could coexist peacefully. Outsiders couldn't help but suspect that there was something fishy going on. Hua Yuan now, Lu Shi said with a smile. Ever since he made his decision, Lu Shi began to pay attention to those outsiders who had occupied the nest of the doves. As expected, he found some clues. What surprised him was that there were more than one dove. He had secretly devoured the weakest one, and he still had to patiently plot against the rest. Lu Zheng felt a chill in his heart. He even had the illusion that this Lu Shi Hua Yuan before him might be even more dangerous than the Galin Hua Yuan. What exactly do you want to do? Naturally, I want to take back everything that belongs to me. Lu Zheng was speechless. You're seriously ill. Why don't you call the doctor over to prescribe a few doses of medicine for you? Chapter 1441. Zhongzhao Songzhou Shiba City. Cough, cough, cough. Cough spilled out from his throat. Niel Yang wanted to endure it, but a fishy smell surged up, causing him to feel nauseous. He covered his mouth with a handkerchief and coughed heavily. When he removed the handkerchief, the snow-white handkerchief was already stained with a glaring black-red blood. He was staring at the pool of blood in a daze when he heard footsteps coming from the corridor. Someone was approaching him from afar. Niel Yang subconsciously stuffed the handkerchief into his sleeve and lay back down. "Come in." Niel Yang secretly wiped the remaining blood from the corner of his mouth. The maids waiting respectfully outside the room filed in and helped him wash up and change his clothes. After a simple breakfast, the maids brought up a dark medicinal concoction. The indescribable smell could be smelled from afar. Niel Yang was a person who was afraid of bitterness, but he knew he had to rely on this medicine to keep him alive. He had to pinch his nose and gulp it down. Zixuan has come to take the roll call. Niel Yang's complexion was not very good. His eyes were slightly sunken, and the dark circles under his eyes made him look very tired and listless. The maid said, Military advisor Wei has been waiting outside since a quarter of an hour ago. In order not to disturb Master, he did not send anyone to inform you. Niel Yang and Wei Dan not only had a master-servant relationship, but they were also close friends and had a close personal relationship. Knowing that Niel Yang's situation was not good, Wei Dan wanted to pack a bed to take care of Niel Yang. Niel Yang nodded and casually found an excuse to send the maid away. After she left, Niel Yang got up and took a lamp from the side, using the flame to burn the blood-stained handkerchief. He knew his body well. It looked fine on the surface, but it was weak on the inside. He did not know how much longer he could hold on. But a cold light flashed across Niel Yang's eyes. No matter how long he could hold on, he had to make old Master Nye die. If he died, this grandfather would not fully support Niel Yang's son and would most likely hand over Niel Yang's family business to his brothers of the same generation. Niel Yang was well aware of the Nye family situation. If Niel Yang's son could not take power, the orphan and widow would only have a dead end. Greetings, Lord. Wei Yong sat patiently and waited for a long time before Niel Yang arrived. Niel Yang's footsteps were unsteady, and he still looked sickly. Is there a need to be so courteous between us? Niel Yang smiled and said, Why are you here so early today? I received a few secret letters yesterday. I should have handed them to you earlier, but it was already late at night. I didn't dare to disturb you from your sweet dreams, so I could only come early this morning. With that, Wei Yong handed a few letters to Niel Yang. One is from Dongqing, and one is from Old Master. Dongqing? Could it be that Lu Shi is up to something again? As he spoke, he opened the seal with his slender fingers and took out the secret letter inside with 2 fingers. She really is a restless woman. After reading 10 lines at a glance, Niel Yang sighed with emotion. With such a daughter in the Lu family, why would they worry about not being able to prosper? Wei Yong reminded, Lu Shi declared independence before the war with Huang Song. In other words, Lady Lu would not be able to gain any advantage from Jiang Pingji. If Lu Shi's heart was on Lady Lu's side, they would not have to worry about prosperity for the next 100 years. Lu Shi is an amazing woman, but Lady Lu's chicken nest can't keep her phoenix, Niel Yang said calmly. She's used to looking for trouble. It's only been more than a year since the war with Huang Song, and she can't help but rub her palms together and make a move on Nanxing. She's not afraid of being choked. Wei Yong was surprised. Was it the content of the secret letter? If that was the case, Nanxing's alliance won? Niel Yang said. According to the informant's report, Nanxing's alliance won a Pyrrhic victory. Is there any news from Nanxing recently? Wei Yong replied. There's a new batch of news recently. Niel Yang's throat was a little itchy, and he suppressed the urge to cough for a while. He did not want to cough up blood in front of Wei Yong. Go and bring them over. After sending Wei Yong away, Niel Yang covered his handkerchief and coughed twice. This time there was no blood on it. Not long after, Wei Yong came over with a stack of books. Niel Yang read them according to the time. Because Nansheng and Zhongzhou were far apart, news would be sent once every half a month. There was a strong lag. For example, the content in Niel Yang's hands was actually old news from more than a month ago. Based on this old news and the news from Dongqing, Niel Yang had a rough understanding of Nanxing's situation. After reading it, Niel Yang smiled and said, She really picked a good time. Nansheng is determined to win. Nanxing's military strength was empty, but Jiang Pengji had been recuperating for more than a year. Their morale was high, so there was a lot to gain from going to Nanxing. The two of them slowly walked to the great universal geographical map. Looking at the beautiful mountains and rivers on the map, Niel Yang felt a sense of desolation. Wei Yong said, Lu Shi's next target is Yang Tao. After beating up Yang Tao, it would be in Chui's turn. The longer Yang Tao held out, the more time Chui would have to recuperate and recover his strength. Niel Yang said, looking at Yang Tao's family history in Nansheng, but the people around him are not people who like to resign themselves to death. They most likely work hard to survive in a hopeless situation. Zixuan, guess what Yang Tao will do to revive the entire chessboard? Wei Yong pondered for a while. I'm afraid Yang Tao's family alone is no match for Lu Shi. Not to mention a year. I'm afraid they won't even last half a year. The only way out is to form an alliance. Wei Yong said. Yang Tao has just finished working with Shui. Looking at the latter's actions, he most likely won't get involved in this chaotic battle. It's possible that he'll hide behind the scenes and be the Oriole. From the looks of it, if Yang Tao wants to deal with Lu Shi, he'll most likely choose to send someone to persuade the Lord to form an alliance. After all, Jiang Pengji only had a few neighboring enemies. Niao Yang said, most likely so. Wei Yong said, if Yang Tao really sends someone over, will the Lord agree? Niao Yang sighed and said, do I still have a choice? If he allowed Lu Shi to grow, he would only be raising a mortal enemy for himself. It's better to think of a way to nip her in the bud before she fully matures. If Yang Tao sends someone over, the alliance must be agreed. Wei Yong nodded and agreed with Niao Yang's point of view. However, Wei Yong would never have guessed that Niao Yang was also making arrangements for his death. After finishing the first secret letter, Niao Yang opened the second secret letter. This was from his grandfather. There weren't many words written on the letter. It could be read in one glance. Wei Yong asked nervously, what instructions does the old master have? Niao Yang said, grandfather still doesn't agree. He says that Dalong is still too young and isn't suitable to be appointed as the successor so early. Wei Yong's face turned green when he heard this. He gritted his teeth and said, is the old master sincerely trying to make the Lord unhappy? Niao Yang lowered his eyes and said, grandfather has been awe-inspiring all his life. If he's nearing his twilight years and his grandson seizes power and makes him a mere figurehead, he definitely won't feel comfortable. The Nie family was second to none in Zhongzhou. Their heritage wasn't something that ordinary gentry families could compare to. Chapter 1442. The Nie family situation was similar to the Su families. The Su brothers, Su Bei and Su Fei, fought to the death. It was all because the grandfather favored the youngest grandson, causing the eldest grandson and the second eldest grandson. The Nie family situation was even more complicated. Old Master Nie was healthy, and the few sons he gave birth to were well-fed and drunk. Not only that, but they were also passionate about producing children and contributing valuable strength to the Nie family's population. Niao Yang's father was only the old master's fifth son. Originally, he had no possibility of inheriting the family business. Who asked the old master to control the Nie family for so many years? He refused to retire at such an old age. On one hand, he suppressed his sons, and on the other, he nurtured a few promising grandchildren. Old Master Nie had always disapproved of the eldest legitimate son's inheritance. Now that he had such an attitude, his other sons were restless. People's hearts wavered, and they began to think about things they shouldn't. At first, it was just a small quarrel. Later, it escalated into a plot to murder the younger generation. As the eldest legitimate son of the fifth branch, Niao Yang was also the most outstanding and dazzling descendant of the Nie family. He received much attention from the outside world. The few uncles saw that old master Nie often praised Niao Yang and seemed to have the intention of handing over the family business to the fifth branch. Soon they could not sit still. Niao Yang was poisoned. The poison was not strong, but over the years, the body would become weaker and weaker. If not for the trip to Dongqing Sangzhou to deal with Jiang Pengji, Wei Ren would have asked his younger brother, Wei Si to take his pulse. Niao Yang would have to wait for his death to find out that someone had poisoned him. The mastermind did it so covertly and even cut off all the clues. Even Niao Yang could not find the real culprit who poisoned him. However, he was sure that the culprit was definitely related to his uncles. After returning to Zhongzhou, Niao Yang purged the people around him and thought of ways to seize power. At the same time, he overtook his grandfather and took control of the Nie family. The process was naturally difficult and dangerous, but Niao Yang was very clear that if he did not do so, the Nie family would sooner or later be destroyed by his uncle's infighting. As there was too much poison in his body, and Niao Yang did not meditate and recuperate, his body was deteriorating year by year. As a precaution, He planned to let his eldest son inherit the Nie family. As long as the title was established, his uncles would not dare to act rashly. However, Old Master Nie still bore a grudge against Nie Liang's actions and refused to admit Nie Liang as his successor. If that was the case, once Nie Liang passed away, facing a group of uncles who were like wolves and tigers, how could a young child defend himself? Wouldn't he be eaten alive by a group of uncles and his grandfather who was old but not old of heart? If there was anything Nie Liang couldn't let go of now, it would probably be his children and the Nie clan. But the guard seemed to want to say something else. Nie Liang smiled bitterly. For the sake of the Nie family, we can't let Liu Shi take over Nanxing no matter what. He knew that he didn't have long to live. If he died, the Nie family would kill each other for power and profit. In the end, Jiang Pengji would benefit from it. If Jiang Pengji was a benevolent person, Nie Liang would not be too worried. The Nie family could still rely on their family background to stand strong, even if they withdrew from the fight for hegemony. What was disappointing was that not only was Jiang Pengji not kind, but she was also a person who could not tolerate sand in her eyes. If the Nie family stayed in her hands, they would be played to death sooner or later. Due to various considerations, Nie Liang could only bite the bullet and continue planning to pave the way for the family. Only by eradicating the hidden dangers would the Nie clan not be scattered in the upcoming chaotic times. If my lord insists on this, then I won't be able to object. It's just that if we send troops to Liu Shi, I'm afraid that someone will object. Nie Liang and Jiang Pengji's situations were different. Both of them came from gentry families and had rich family backgrounds. However, Jiang Pengji broke away from the shackles of the Liu family and became independent. No one could interfere with her decisions. Nie Liang controlled the Nie family and borrowed the power of the clan. He was still more or less under the control of others. Even if Nie Liang won over many loyal strategists and generals, he still couldn't get rid of the influence of his family. Nie Liang said, "I'll consider this matter carefully. If someone is really stubborn and continues to block the way." He paused. His eyes carried a chill that sent chills down one's spine. If the saplings want to grow well, people will have to trim the extra branches. If the uncles of the Nie family were still so unreasonable, Nie Liang might as well inflict the hardships he had suffered on them. They still wanted to fight. They would all follow him to the Yama Palace and slowly fight. Since they were all scourges alive, it was better to die peacefully. Perhaps the Nie family could turn their misfortune into fortune. Nie Liang didn't want to do this if he had a choice. Wei Yong, who was at the side, didn't know that his good friend had made a shocking decision. At that moment, someone outside reported that the eldest Lang Jun had come to pay his respects. Nie Liang's face relaxed a lot. Nie Liang's eldest son was about to turn 20. His appearance had taken the advantages of his father and mother. He was tall and handsome and had the style of Nie Liang when he was young. Behind the eldest son was a kind-looking young man who looked like the eldest son's tail. The tail was none other than the son of Nie Liang's cousin. He didn't have much of a presence and had a cowardly temperament. Nie Liang also didn't want his son to be alone, so he was happy to see someone of the same age that he could play with. "Father, why is your face so pale?" The eldest son paid his respects to his father and bowed to his father-in-law, Wei Yong. Nie Liang said, "I was busy last night and woke up early this morning. It's normal to be pale. Don't worry, my son." The eldest son said a few more words of concern. Seeing Nie Liang frown, he stood up and left. From the beginning to the end, the kind-looking nephew didn't get a word in, but he wasn't angry. Little did he know that after the two left, a cold voice rang in his ears. Nie Liang doesn't have much vitality left. He only has half a year left to live. Half a year? But he seems to want to help his son get the throne. If he succeeds, won't my previous efforts be in vain? The Emperor's assistance system selects the person with destiny. If you don't have a chance to succeed, will I choose you? Don't worry. Yang, why are you in a daze? Nie Liang's eldest son stopped to wait for his cousin when he saw that his cousin didn't move. Nothing. I'm just a little worried about Uncle. Not only does he look worse than before, but he also lost a lot of weight. Niel Yang's eldest son said. You're quite close to father. The other brothers don't care about father, but it's good that they didn't say anything behind his back. It was because Nie Yang was so good that he liked to help his cousin. After a while, you and I will be crowned. I wonder what character will father and the others choose. The crowning ceremony was very important for men in ancient times. Choosing a character was also a part of it. After crowning, it meant that one had become an adult. Nie Yang wasn't valued by his parents because of his mediocre aptitude. He didn't even mention such an important day as the crowning ceremony. If Nie Yang didn't remember, Nie Yang would probably be embarrassed. Nie Yang smiled. Anything is fine. Uncle's literary talent is brilliant, not inferior to a great scholar. Are you still worried about not having a good character? That's true. The two of them went to the family school to study together. Nie Yang's eldest son walked in front, while Nie Yang was always one step behind. Chapter 1443. Nie Yang did not know who this self-proclaimed emperor assistant system in his mind was. Was it human or a ghost? Was it a god or a demon? But he knew that its origins were not simple. It saw through Nie Yang's ambitions, and Nie Yang needed its help to realize his ambitions. The two hit it off and worked well together. Nie Yang wanted to stand out and control the Nie family. He wanted to use the Nie family to soar to the throne. However, this goal was too difficult. It would be difficult to achieve without the help of allies. Can you really help me become an emperor? Nie Yang pondered the authenticity of these words. He looked gentle and generous. Others thought he was weak and easy to bully, but this thing saw through his ambitions. It's true. The dragon energy on you is the richest in Zhongzhou. You will definitely become a hegemon in the future. Nie Yang laughed. Although he was ambitious, he did not have much hope. The old master of the Nie family was not dead yet. His sons were still alive and kicking. They were all part of the reincarnation brigade. Who knew how many sons he had? Nie Yang was only one of the 40 or 50 great-grandchildren. How could he stand out from so many people? Unless those who stood in his way were all dead. Those who survived could not compete with him. You're so confident. I don't really believe you. Nie Yang met the system when he was 9. He had been wary of it for the first few years. After spending time with it, and it had helped Nie Yang a lot, he slowly began to trust it. The two had worked together for more than 10 years. Nie Yang trusted this friend more and more. As a nobody in the Nie family, Nie Yang knew one thing. If he did not compete, he was destined to be stepped on and never be able to rise again. Since the system said that he had the true Dragon Emperor energy, his future was limitless. Why not fight for his future? If Nie Yang wanted to rise, he first had to help the third branch of the Nie family stand out. Then, it would be much easier to deal with the others. After the system's reminder, Nie Yang knew that his uncle Nie Yang was a talent that could revitalize the Nie family. At the same time, he was also a stumbling block. As long as Nie Yang was in the 5th branch, the 3rd branch's chances of winning were slim. Nie Yang said, if Nie Yang is weak and does not have long to live, will he not be an obstacle? The system gasped. You want to assassinate Nie Yang? This was his uncle. Nie Yang smiled and said, didn't you tell me that Nie Yang is a short-lived ghost and is destined to not live long? But I see that he is in good health, without any illness or disaster, which doesn't seem to match what you told me. I'm not taking his life right away. I'm just letting him follow his destiny. The system did it cleanly. It was 2 years after Nie Yang realized that he had been poisoned and the poison had seeped into his bones. To be honest, Nie Yang was quite afraid that Nie Yang would find out about it. At this moment, he wasn't a match for Nie Yang at all, and once he was dragged out, his life would be over. Who knew that the system's abilities were beyond imagination? Even Nie Yang couldn't find many clues. Nie Yang's plan became even bolder. In order to make everyone believe that he was gentle and harmless, Nie Yang had worn a false mask for many years, almost fooling himself. He was often bullied by his brothers, and no matter how badly he was bullied, he didn't know how to fight back, and was even used as a knife. However, at the same time of disguise, he also needed to build connections, and those hedonistic sons were the easiest to fool. For example, Nyeyang had once befriended the grandson of an elder of the Nye clan. He was an out-and-out hedonistic son of a rich family, unambitious, conceited, stupid, and easily manipulated. The thing he hated the most was that someone was better than him. What did this hedonistic son do that was out of line? Under Nyeyang's instigation, he purposely caused trouble for a young scholar at a gathering. That young scholar didn't have any background, but he was extremely talented and didn't know how to hide his talent, boasting of his intelligence. In the end, he angered the hedonistic son, and because of his words, the hedonistic son took revenge and broke his leg. Not only that, the hedonistic son didn't let it go, and colluded with the magistrate's office to frame the young scholar with a groundless crime, and he was sent to the border for 2 years. In the end, the scholar's body was weak and couldn't take it, and he died of a cold halfway through. The young scholar died, and it was said that the scholar's mother and wife died of illness not long after, leaving only an old man and a child. He was a cold and heartless person, and Nyeyang didn't pay attention to where the grandfather and grandson went. He only vaguely remembered that the young scholar's surname was Sun, and his name was Lai. So what if he was talented? If he wanted to fly before his wings were strong, sooner or later, he would be broken and fall to his death. Over the years, the Emperor's assistant system taught Nyeyang a lot of tricks, and Nyeyang also used the system to do many small tricks. All the plans were going well, but who would have thought that Nyeyang would become the only anomaly? Nyeyang, who had never fought for power, suddenly rose up, imprisoned old Master Nye, forcefully seized the family's power, and made a few of his uncles a figurehead. His actions were unbelievably fast, and by the time Nyeyang reacted, the overall situation had already been settled. Nyeyang was in power, and the 5 branches rose in status. Nyeyang's eldest son also became a phoenix, and his value doubled. This change made Nyeyang panic, but he didn't give himself away. Instead, he pitifully won Nyeyang's eldest son's favor. After a few years of getting along, the two of them were closer than blood brothers, and even Nyeyang let down his guard against him. Just a little more. Nyeyang leaned against the pavilion, and Nyeyang's eldest son was bathed in the sunlight, holding a book and memorizing it. "What do you plan to do?" Nyeyang said. Nyeyang isn't someone easy to deal with. When he was alive, I would definitely arouse his suspicions if I made too many moves. The safest way is to outlive him. According to Nyeyang's temperament, he couldn't do anything to his uncles when he was alive, so he might take them away before he died to clear the obstacles for his son. This way, it's equivalent to helping me clear my competitors. I can't beat Nyeyang, but can I beat Nyeyang's son? Nyeyang himself is full of schemes, but the son he raised is so innocent and gullible. What a pity. To tell you the truth, this is called being of the same origin. Nyeyang glanced at it, and he almost laughed. Being of the same origin? Does it mean that Nyeyang is also innocent and gullible? The system said, in a sense, Nyeyang is indeed quite gullible. His weakness is too obvious, and he's also stubborn. Nyeyang was speechless. After a while, he said, "What you said makes sense." The system asked again, "What if Nyeyang didn't drag you down with him at the last minute?" Nyeyang's gaze was slightly cold. "Do you know how to frame someone? Dead people don't speak. Nyeyang has to take the blame, even if he doesn't want to." Nyeyang was chatting happily with the system when Nyeyang's eldest son, who was under the sun, called out, "Ayang, what's so interesting about this pavilion? Come to my place. The courtyard is beautiful in spring." Nyeyang said, "I don't really like it. It's easy to tan. The sun isn't hot, so how can you tan? You're a man, not a lady. Why are you afraid of the dark?" Chapter 1444. Yang Tao was drinking. When he heard his subordinate's report, he spat it out. Fortunately, no innocent people were involved. Cough, cough, cough. Are you sure? Lucy really used this excuse to send troops? Yang Tao coughed until tears came out. He didn't expect Jiang Pengji to be so cunning. Even the excuse for sending troops was different. Last year, the Tao family rebelled. They sent invitations to Zhangzhou and Wanzhou to sow discord, trying to make the two feudal vassals bristle with anger. The result was gratifying. Yang Tao was not in Zhangzhou, but at the front line in Nanxing. Jiang Pengji was clever and didn't fall for it. Her scheme was fruitless. Not only did it cost the whole family, but also gave Jiang Pengji a ready-made excuse. She was worried that she had no reason to find trouble with Yang Tao. It's enough to send troops. They don't care what the excuse is. His wife, Yin Shuxian, sat next to Yang Tao with the baby in her arms. They enjoyed their rare time as husband and wife. Yang Tao said, "I'm just surprised that Lu Shi put in so much effort to send troops." The baby in Yin Shushuan's arms pounced on Yang Tao. He smiled and took the soft little guy. He couldn't get enough of kissing him. "Husband, do you think my brother's trip will be fruitful?" Yin Shuxian was very worried. It was a long journey to Zhongzhou. She didn't know if her brother, Yin Lin, could successfully convince the feudal vassals of Zhongzhou to form an alliance. Yang Tao said, "Xiaoyang never disappoints. This time is no exception. If he says he's confident, then he's confident." Although Jiang Pengji said she wanted to send troops to war, the preparatory work was very long. Yang Tao was not anxious at all. "Wife, look, the child is still sucking my finger." Yang Tao was playful. Seeing the child holding his finger and sending it to his mouth, he smiled and didn't move it away. Instead, he looked at the baby with relish. Yin Shushuan's mouth twitched. She didn't expect her husband to be so childish. She quickly slapped his hand away. "You're sweaty and stinky. Aren't you afraid that the child will eat something bad?" Yang Tao laughed. "The child doesn't dislike it. He seems to like it. He'll definitely be a great general in the future. Your brain is full of fighting and killing." Yin Shuxian said in a light tone, "I don't like it." Yang Tao had lost his external brain, but he still had to do his work. At most, his efficiency would be lower. Yin Lin knew that in his absence, no one could control the Lord. Therefore, he chose a gentle and generous temporary brain for Yang Tao. Yang Tao was a pure and kind person. If you were to be unreasonable, he would be unreasonable. If you were to be soft, he would not be able to be fierce at all. Therefore, even though Yin Lin was gone, Yang Tao was still under the control of the temporary brain. After teasing the baby, Yang Tao went back to work. There was a pile of information about Nansheng on the table. He casually flipped through it and sighed. Xiaoyang's plans are truly flawless, and Chui's wild ambition really can't hold back. The allied army of Nansheng had completely collapsed, and Chui defeated the feudal vassals one by one, swallowing them up one by one and expanding rapidly. Everyone in Yang Tao's tent panicked when they saw this. This was a good opportunity. Why didn't the Lord jump out and snatch a piece of the pie from Chui? And Chui is ambitious. If he doesn't have Lu Zheng by his side to assist him, I'm afraid he won't be able to achieve anything great. Yang Tao muttered, "It's a pity that Lu Zheng is casting pearls before swine. This Chui isn't a wise ruler. He can only share the hardships, but not the joys." And Chui had hurt Lu Zheng's heart time and time again. The conflict was getting deeper and deeper. If it exploded one day, Lu Zheng would be devastated. The temporary brain said, "Everyone has their own fate." Yang Tao said, "I don't believe in fate." On the other side, because the information was outdated, when Jiang Pengji found out that Yin Lin had secretly gone to Zhongzhou, she wasn't in a hurry to stop him. "You want to fight two against one again?" Jiang Pengji said. "How long has Sangzhou been resting?" Wei Xi laughed. "The Nie family of Zhongzhou are not of one mind. It's not impossible for the Lord to fight one against two." Jiang Pengji frowned. She said, "If Zhongzhou gets involved, we have an abundance of troops, but our rations will be very tight. It's better to end the battle quickly. If we are delayed, the situation will be bad. At the end of the day, fighting a war is a job of burning food." Wei Xi said, "Why not wait for the autumn harvest?" Zhong Guang has made great progress in his research on fertilizers. They will be used for this year's spring plowing. Jiang Pengji said, "Yes, I know." Before they could say much, Jiang Pengji received a booklet. It was signed by Sun One. "Zaidao." Jiang Pengji was puzzled. Ever since Sun Wen entered her camp, apart from the battle at the northern borderline, he had been rooted in the governance and construction of the northern borderline. He usually kept a low profile. He was obsessed with Sun Wen. Other than his grandson Lan Lan and his work, he didn't care about anything else. Suddenly receiving a booklet at this time meant that there was something urgent. Wei Ci said, "Maybe he has a request." Jiang Pingji opened the booklet and asked, "What request?" After reading the booklet, she knew what Sun Wen was asking for. He wanted to apply for a job transfer. He's doing well in the northern borderline. Why does he suddenly want to apply for a transfer? Jiang Pengji was surprised. Wei Ci said, "Zidao should be for the Nief family of Zhongzhou. If he hears that the Nief family wants to participate in the war, he won't be able to sit still." For Sun Wen, the Nief family was the culprit who caused his family to be ruined and killed. He had to bury his children before him. Jiang Pengji understood and said with a smile, then agreed to it. It's time to let Zidao have a peace of mind. When she was done with the matters at hand, the sky outside was already dark. Jiang Pengji turned off the streaming room on time and asked Wei Ci to accompany her for her meal. "I don't think I asked you about Zidao's past." Wei Ci said, "My lord, you really didn't ask." Jiang Pengji asked, "Did he have a grudge with the Nief family in the past?" Wei Ci's expression changed instantly. He was at a loss for words. "No, Zidao was an important member of the Nief family and was highly regarded. I don't know what went wrong in this life, but the Nief family actually hurt Zidao's only son. Not only did they break his leg, but they also caused him to die on the way to exile. This also caused a series of chain reactions. Sun Wen's wife passed away due to grief, and his daughter-in-law also passed away. Only the grandfather and grandson were left in the family. If Sun Wen hadn't fled to Dongxing with his grandson, Jiang Pengji wouldn't have been able to find him. This is called the butterfly effect, Jiang Pengji said. Maybe our appearance changed his fate. Wei Ci couldn't be sure. Anyway, it wasn't a bad thing for his lord. Sun Wen received permission. After completing the handover work, he immediately rushed to Xiangyang district in Wanzhou. Sun Lan saw his grandfather at home after school. He suddenly thought he was dreaming. As usual, he flew into his grandfather's arms. Unexpectedly, his grandfather, who was usually amiable, had a solemn look on his face. "Grandfather?" Sun Lan looked puzzled. He took the initiative to hold his grandfather's hand and found that his fingers were trembling. "Lan Lan." Sun Wen said, "Do you miss grandmother, father, and mother?" Sun Lan hung his head and said, "I do, but I can't because grandfather will be even more upset." Sun Wen said, "Soon, grandfather will personally behead the enemy who killed them. He will peel off the skin and light the sky lantern with daylily." Chapter 1445. Peeling daylily? Lighting the sky lantern? Sun Wen's voice was not loud, but the murderous intent in his words pierced through the eardrums. Sun Lan could not help but tremble. "Grandpa," he revealed a somewhat fearful expression. He was too unfamiliar with this sinister and sharp grandfather. Sun Wen restrained his aura and sighed softly as he stroked his grandson's long hair. This child had not yet reached adulthood. He could not be at ease. Sun Lan said nervously, "Grandpa, didn't you say that the enemy is from the Nief family?" "The Nief family?" "Grandpa, don't mess around. You're my only relative." Grandpa and grandson had depended on each other for so many years. Compared to revenge, Sun Lan hoped that his grandfather could live to a ripe old age. This was more important than anything else. "Lan Lan, you're not a child anymore. You're a young man now," Sun Wen said earnestly. "If there weren't any major changes in the family, your father and mother would have found a wife for you and arranged a marriage. When the wife reaches marriageable age, you'll be crowned an adult." Sun Lan blushed. He really did not think that much. "Grandpa knows that you're kind. If possible, what's wrong with being simple? But birth, old age, sickness, and death, no matter if you're a noble or a commoner, no one can escape this ending. Grandpa doesn't know how long these old bones of mine can accompany you and help you. When Grandpa is gone, what will happen to Grandpa's Lan Lan? You have to know what kind of world this is. It's a chaotic world now. The feudal lords are fighting with each other, and the common people are ants. It's true that the Lord is powerful, but the world is unpredictable. Who can predict what the future will be like? How can Grandpa be at ease? Grandpa, don't say that. You'll definitely live to a ripe old age. Sun Lan said with a smile, I won't let you down. Sunwin laughed. Grandpa also wants to live to a ripe old age. Not only do I want to see Lan Lan get married, but I also want to see you have a group of children. Sun Lan had been well-fed and well-nourished all these years. He was at the age of growing taller, and the baby fat on his face had gradually disappeared, adding some youthfulness to his appearance. In time, he would become the dream man of many girls in the boudoir. Then the Nief family. Sun Lan's pair of black grape-like eyes were filled with anticipation. Sun Wen said bluntly, Our Lord intends to mobilize troops against Nanqing's Yang Tao. Yang Tao has sent people to seek an alliance with Zhong Zhao's Nief family. Grandfather has rested long enough in the northern state these past few years. Even his bones have gotten lazy. It's time for him to come out and stretch his muscles, lest others look down on him. Sun Lan said, Who dares to look down on Grandpa? Besides, it's so hard to go to war, and Grandpa is getting old. Just the long march alone was torturous enough for an old man who was approaching his 50s to follow the army. Sun Lan could be considered as the first batch of students of the Golden Scale Academy. Currently, the content of her studies was getting more and more difficult and more practical. The teachers of the academy often offered military and political courses. Military cases from ancient times to the present were picked out one by one and used as teaching materials to discuss and learn with the students. Sun Lan studied very hard, and her grades were basically in the top 10. Occasionally, Sun Wen would talk to him about the situation in the outside world. He understood what he meant and had his own thoughts. There will definitely be a battle between the Nief family and the Lord. Grandfather won't be able to sit still when his enemies come knocking on his door. The old man was old, but he was not so old that he could not move. The reason why I volunteered to be transferred back was not only to avenge your grandmother and parents, but also for you. Sun Lan said dejectedly, Grandfather dotes on me, and always plans for me, but I also hope that Grandfather can. Sun Wen felt that he did not make himself clear enough, and explained, Grandfather sees that you are close to the eldest daughter of Qiguan Wenjiang. Qiguan Rang is the Lord's confidant, and you lost your pride when you were young, so your status is much lower than his. Since ancient times, marriage is about matching families. If Grandfather doesn't fight for you, do you want to rely on yourself? When you work hard to climb up, Qiguan Jinghui's daughter can even call you uncle. Sun Lan's face turned red, as if he had applied a thick layer of rouge. Sun Wen looked at him and said with a smile, Tell Grandfather honestly. Do you like Qiguan Wenjing's daughter? Sun Lan was extremely shy, and he timidly moved closer to his grandfather's ear and whispered, I like her. She's very pretty, and she's a good person. Sun Wen took the opportunity to say, If you like her, not only will Grandfather have to work hard for you, but you have to work hard too. Sun Lan said innocently, Isn't it all about fate? There is a saying in the books that a marriage of 1,000 miles was linked by a single thread. Wouldn't they be able to tie the knot if they liked each other? The corner of Sun Wen's mouth twitched. His grandson was more innocent than he thought. Fate? Even if your fate with Qiguan Jinghui is as thick as your thigh, do you believe that Qiguan Rang will take a knife and chop your fate into pieces if you are not worthy of her? Which father would be willing to hand over his beautiful daughter to a son-in-law who is inferior in every aspect? Qiguan Rang did not easily offend people, but when it came to his daughter's marriage, this person was as difficult to deal with as a hedgehog. If Sun Lan did not have a bit of ability, he would not be able to surpass Qiguan Rang. Sun would have been too low-key these years. Even though he had made great achievements in governing Bay State, northern borderline, his sense of existence was not as good as a few young people who were active in the front lines. He had tried to sound out Qiguan Rang, but the other party did not say anything and only responded with a cold snort. Sun Wen had an idea. Sun Lan tugged at his sleeves and said pitifully, "I'm not that bad." Sun Wen said, "Of course I'm not bad, but I'm still far from Qiguan Wenjing standards. He won't give in so easily." If they got married in the future and Sun Lan still had such a soft temperament, it would be strange if Qiguan Rang would treat him well. If Sun Lan did not fancy Qiguan Jinghui, Sun Wen would not have worked so hard. If he worked harder now, it would be less difficult when he proposed to Qiguan Rang in the future. Sun Lan was speechless. He felt a little hopeless. After a while, Sun Wen asked him, "Lan Lan, do you want to follow Grandpa and train with the army?" Military life was the best way to hone people. He did not expect Sun Lan's temperament to change drastically, but at least he could be more resolute. Sun Lan pointed at herself in surprise. "Can I do it?" He was still a student of the Golden Scale Academy. Would the headmaster let him go? Sun Wen said, "It's naturally possible for Grandfather to beg the Lord. But when we get to the army camp, Grandpa won't be able to take care of you at all times. The army camp is not like home. You have to be mentally prepared for whatever difficulties you might encounter and suffer. Don't complain about being tired." Sun Lan shook his head and said, "I'm not afraid of suffering." After the conversation between grandfather and grandson, Sun Lan could not sleep that night. The next day, he went to the academy and could not help but tell Qiguan Jinghui everything. Of course, he did not say that he liked her or that Grandpa wanted her to be the Sun family's granddaughter-in-law. He only said that he was going to follow the army for the sake of training. Qiguan Jinghui said, "Why do you suddenly want to go to the army camp?" Sun Lan said embarrassedly, "Maybe Grandpa thinks that I'm too soft and can't stand up. It's good to go to the army camp and see the world." Qiguan Jinghui asked him, "What about the academy's curriculum?" Chapter 1446. Qiguan Jinghui said, "Marching to war is not child's play. You have to go through all kinds of barren hills and unruly rivers. Can your body handle it?" Sun Lan's equestrian archery was not very good. His level was below average, and his physique was also weak. Marching to war could really kill people. Grandpa sent me to the military camp to gain experience. Most of the time, I will be a clerk and help out. He won't let me carry a sword to the battlefield to kill the enemy. It's not that dangerous." Sun Lan smiled shyly. "There is still a long time before the war. I will find a martial arts master to learn more." Qiguan Jinghui smiled. "There is no need to be so troublesome. I can practice with you." The Golden Scale Academy was divided into male and female classes. The morning classes were the same, but the afternoon classes were different. The boys learned equestrian archery, while the girls learned physical training and needlework. Generally, the former was emphasized. The needlework level only needed to be at the level of showing a purse. As for physical training, many people's understanding was superficial. They all thought that it was a dance that was mainly for watching and training. Sun Lan was no exception. In the end, Sun Lan's sword was knocked out of his hand for the 10th time. The pain made his eyes red. Qiguan Jinghui's sword was not only powerful, flexible, and fast. Before he could blink, the sword was already close. Not only that, he also found that the other party's strength was terrifying. It completely subverted his inherent impression of a little girl. But Jinghui looked so delicate and small. Maybe Grandpa was right. Very painful? Look at you. Your eyes are already watering. She put down the wooden sword and went forward to grab his hand. Qiguan Jinghui carefully examined his red palm. She felt a little guilty. She practiced too much with her classmates and the female soldiers and martial arts masters. She forgot to be careful. Sun Lan shyly withdrew his hand and unnaturally covered the area between his thumb and index finger with his sleeve. The skin that was touched by her was hot. "No, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm a little sleepy now. It's not that I want to cry because of the pain." "Okay, I'll believe you." Qiguan Jinghui did not suspect anything. Coincidentally, a maid brought dinner to the two of them. "Mother and two younger sisters, have you eaten?" Before eating, she casually asked her mother and younger sister. The ancients did not have safe contraceptives. Qiguan Rang and his wife loved children. Qiguan Jinghui gave birth to two more girls. Currently, there was still one in her stomach. Qiguan Jinghui hoped that it would be a younger brother. This was because she had overheard the maid say that her father was middle-aged and did not have a male heir. Madame did not allow Rujuan to marry into her family, so he was under a lot of pressure. Growing up in this family, Qiguan Jinghui didn't feel the importance of having a male heir. When she learned about the customs of the outside world, she wasn't so sure. Even though her parents had a good relationship with each other and there was no conflict between them, Qiguan Jinghui still hoped to have a younger brother so that her mother's pressure would be less. Outside, there were many examples of the legal wife not being able to give birth to a son of the first wife, and the husband taking in Rujuan. She didn't want to have an eyesore between her parents. Even if she couldn't give birth to a younger brother, it didn't matter. In the future, she would set up a female household to look for a husband. She definitely wouldn't tarnish her father's reputation. Little did they know, Qiguan Rang hoped that his wife's child would be a princess. After all, he had made a wish for a dozen daughters. Sun Lan and Qiguan Jinghui were about the same age. As a boy, Sun Lan should be taller, but that was not the case in reality. In the past 6 months, Qiguan Jinghui had grown very quickly. When the two of them stood together, Sun Lan was still half a head shorter than her. However, the elders said that girls grew fast at this age. In another 2 years, it would be Sun Lan's turn to grow taller. He definitely wouldn't be short. Sun Lan was relieved. He didn't want to be a dwarf. After the meal and tea, Qiguan Jinghui suddenly asked, "Did Mr. Sun give you a courtesy name?" Sun Lan replied, "I haven't turned 20 yet. It's still too early to give me a courtesy name." Because of the ways of the world, many people had a courtesy name without being crowned. Sun Lan was still too young, so Sun Wen hadn't given him a name yet. Why did Jinghui suddenly ask about this? A few days ago, I heard Changshen call him Brother wrongly. After asking, I found out that it was a courtesy name given by Elder Fengyi. Fengyi, courtesy name wrongly? Sun Lan was looking forward to it. What courtesy name would his grandfather give him? He was deep in thought when Jinghui said, "Last night, I heard father and mother talking. It seems that Fengyi is going to be engaged to Changsheng." Sun Lan was supporting his chin with his hand. When he heard this, he almost slipped. Engaged? How old is Changsheng? Fengyi was a little older than Sun Lan. It was normal for him to be engaged, but his partner was too young. The two families are happy to see it happen. There's nothing bad about it. Engagement isn't marriage. At least it has to wait until Changsheng reaches the age of 15. By then, Fengyi will be an adult. Qiguan Jinghui was not surprised. After all, Fengyi had a good reputation. A group of elders also thought highly of him. Even Feng Jin couldn't find fault with him. The two families should be engaged first. If there were any changes in the process, it wouldn't be a big deal to cancel the engagement. Sun Lan said embarrassedly, "I just think it's too early." Jinghui said, "It's most likely true. Didn't you notice that Changsheng's name on her nameplate has changed?" Sun Lan naturally didn't notice. Changsheng's original nameplate was Feng Changsheng, but now it was changed to Feng Yu. Changsheng was used as a courtesy name. If the two families wanted to be engaged, although the process was not as complicated as marriage, it still required the names of both the man and the woman. The next day, he went to the academy to ask Fengyi and got a positive answer from him. Sun Lan was speechless. In a moment of carelessness, Fengyi actually quit the singles alliance. Why so sudden? Sun Lan hadn't heard anything about it before. Even though there were signs, Feng Jin had never relented. Feng Yi said, "Changsheng stayed at the Feng family for a while at the beginning of the year. You know that people often visit their relatives and friends at the beginning of the year. The Feng family is also a big family, so naturally, someone has their eyes on Changsheng. It's said that he's the grandson of an elder who married out. He's of noble birth and has frequent contacts with the Feng family. Because the elders of the two families had a complicated relationship, Feng Jin couldn't reject them outright, so he could only ask for help. In the end, Feng Yi got a bargain. Feng Jin and Feng Jin already had a verbal agreement. Now that they were engaged, it was just a written agreement. In the afternoon, Feng Yi found out that Sun Lan might be going with the army for training. He looked thoughtful. As soon as he got home, Feng Yi told his father about his plan. Feng Zhan said, "You want to go to the battlefield when you're not even fully grown?" Feng Yi said, "No matter how much you read, you won't be the next Zhao Kuo if you don't put it into practice. Why do you suddenly have this idea? You've been provoked by Sun Wen's grandson, so you insist on competing? Did he really think that it was so easy to survive in the army?" Feng Yi's eyes were calm, but Feng Zhan felt that his son was rolling his eyes in his heart. Sun Lan has Sun Lan's strong points. I have no intention of competing with her. Feng Yi just felt that what he learned in the academy was enough for now. As to how to use it flexibly, he still needed to put it into practice. What was written in the books and reality were always different. Chapter 1447. Although Feng Yi was still many years old, he had always been calm and considerate. He was the most reassuring. Since he took the initiative to ask Feng Zhan to enter the military camp to gain experience, he had naturally thought it through. His stepmother, Wan Xiao'er, did not agree. Not only did she not support him, but she also glared at her husband. Listen to what this person is saying. Life and death are fated. Don't blame others. Feng Yi was the only child of the old Feng family. Feng Zhen's body was weak, and it was difficult for him to have children. If something happened to him, how could he answer to his ancestors? This father was really cruel. He was willing to throw his 12 or 13-year-old son into the army. Wasn't he afraid that Feng Yi would never return? Feng Yi naturally understood Wan Xiao'er's good intentions. But, father, you are weak. Because of this, I have to shoulder the heavy responsibility of revitalizing the family. Wan Xiao'er sighed softly. Even so, Rongli, you're still too young. Even those big and burly men can't stand fighting in the army, let alone you. If you really want to gain experience, why don't you wait a year or two, when you're a little older? Feng Yi pursed his lips and did not speak. He only shook his head and firmly rejected his stepmother's suggestion. Seeing this, Wan Xiao'er could only give up. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of her husband Feng Zhan's half-smiling face. Instantly, she was furious. She secretly reached out and pinched the flesh around his waist. It hurt so much that the smile on Feng Zhan's face cracked. Seeing his reaction, Wan Xiao'er's anger subsided a little. Feng Yi's matter quickly reached the ears of his future father-in-law, Feng Jin. The latter snorted and did not comment. He did not react, but Chang Sheng, who was sitting at the side doing her homework, could not sit still. Feng Jin said, "Is there an embroidery needle under the mat? Sit properly, don't fall all over the place." Chang Sheng put down her brush and stared at her father. She asked, "Father, did you say that Brother Rongli is going to the military camp? Why? Our little Chang Sheng feels bad?" Chang Sheng said, "No. I just heard the maid mention that the battlefield is very dangerous. Brother Rongli looks thin and small." Feng Jin could not help but chide his daughter with a smile. "Father's silly daughter. If the eldest son of the Feng family does not go and gain experience, what right does he have to marry my precious daughter?" Feng Jin was happy to see this happen. How could a young man grow into a reliable man if he didn't go through real-life experiences? He would rather raise his daughter for the rest of her life than hand her over to an unreliable man who would harm her for the rest of her life. Swords and sabers have no eyes on the battlefield, but he's not going into battle. He's just studying in the camp, so there's not much danger. Feng Jin decided to let Feng Yi and Changsheng get engaged because he saw that the lad had a promising future and a reliable character. He was worth entrusting his daughter to. Otherwise, with the foundation and status of the Feng family, what else could Feng Yi have that was worthy of his attention? Feng Jin didn't care about his colleague's social status, but it was different for his son-in-law. If it wasn't for the Lord, Feng Yi's background wouldn't have made it onto Feng Jin's list of candidates. Marriage was not just about two children falling in love with each other. The background and upbringing of the two families had to be taken into consideration as well. Feng Yi could barely be considered to have been born into a landowning family, but his family had long been in decline. By Feng Zhen's generation, there were only a few family assets left and not many connections. If it weren't for the chaos of the world, Feng Zhen's line of descent would most likely be in dire straits. How would they have the right to become in-laws with the noble Feng family? Feng Zhen was highly valued by the Lord, so his future would not be too bad. Feng Yi had been steady and intelligent since she was young. She could barely be considered a child that everyone had watched grow up. Feng Jin was well aware of this child's character. Feng Jin reluctantly approved of Feng Yi after all these conditions were added together. Feng Yi took the initiative to ask for experience, so he had a higher opinion of him. Feng Jin said earnestly, "You're still young, so you don't understand these things. When you do, you'll understand my painstaking efforts." Changxing nodded and said, "Yes, but father, can I?" Feng Jin smiled bitterly and said, "You haven't grown up yet, so I can't keep you. Go. Remember to come back early to do your homework." Changxing brought 2 maids to visit Feng Yi's house. When Feng Jin saw this, his heart felt suffocated. "Madam." Feng Jin felt a little suffocated, and he didn't let go of his wife's hand. "Give birth to a boy this time. Don't want a daughter." Feng Jin squeezed out 2 words after a while. "My heart aches." His daughter was so cute and likable. Why did she have to marry someone else? Feng Jin said, "It hurts as if someone has gouged out my heart." Wei Jingxian couldn't help but laugh. She didn't expect her husband to be so childish. It didn't take long for Jiang Pingji to hear that Feng Jin and Feng Zhen had become in-laws, and the children of both families were engaged. She held her pen in a daze for a long time, then said after a while, "Children nowadays are really amazing. This is definitely puppy love among puppy love." She was dealt a blow, and the salted fish in the streaming room wasn't any better. Tudu Feiqiu. If I remember correctly, Feng Jin's Changsheng was delivered by the streamer, and they're engaged in the blink of an eye. Yao Yingyun, Changsheng, who just entered the 1st grade of primary school, and Feng Yi, who just entered the 1st grade of junior high school, are engaged? Don't the university students and the working people feel heartache? Why are you watching the streaming? Do you have a boyfriend? Have you found a girlfriend? You're a dog that weighs more than 100 pounds. How can you still be single? This streaming room is too unfriendly to single dogs. So smile and say goodbye. Mo Yo Kwai. My heart hurts, old friend. Even primary school and junior high school students are in love. How can single dogs like us, who have been watching the streaming room all year round, survive? Jiang Pengji also felt heartache. She sighed and said, "Zixiao, aren't you worried?" Wei Ci looked up at her from a pile of documents, blinking in confusion. "Worried about what?" "About the expedition against Yang Tao." Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and said, "Aren't you worried that our children will be the same age as Feng Yi's children?" Wei Ci said calmly, "If Feng Yi didn't drown and die young in the previous life, Feng Yi would be 18 when Feng Yi was born. In other words, Feng Yi's children would really be the same age as Jiang Yan." Jiang Pengji said, "It's a pity that Feng Yi died in the previous life." Wei Ci said, "Zisher's Hanshi powder acted up, and Feng Yi hurriedly found a servant to call for a doctor, but he accidentally stepped on the moss on the stone steps and slipped in the pond. Even though the servant saved him in time, Feng Yi's body was weak, and he fell seriously ill after falling into the water, and he died within a few days. Zisher brooded over this for most of his life, and in the end, it was better to have Feng Yu. According to Zisher, Feng Yu's appearance is 50% similar to Feng Yi's." At this point, Wei Ci paused and recalled Feng Yu's appearance in the previous life. He said again, "Their appearance should be quite similar, but Feng Yi is dignified and serious, while Feng Yu is warm and gentle, and smiles whenever he meets people. Each has his own charm." Jiang Pengji was curious about her future son-in-law. After inquiring about it in detail, Jiang Pengji couldn't help but sigh. The thing that Feng Zhen is most proud of in his life isn't his achievements, but the 2 sons he gave birth to. He even gave birth to 7 or 8 children, but all of them added up are not as good as his 2 children. It's really infuriating. Chapter 1448. Until Wei Ci committed suicide in front of the palace in his previous life, He did not know how the future young Emperor Jiang Yin hooked up with Feng Yu. Feng Yi from Feng Zhen's family seduced Chongsheng at such a young age, and Feng Yu made a vow of love with the crown princess without saying a word. Were these things passed down from generation to generation? Wei Ci felt uncomfortable at the thought. His expression turned paler and paler, and his brows were furrowed so tightly that they could squash flies. Jiang Pengji said, "Zi Xiao, did you think of something bad?" Wei Ci said, "The young emperor made a vow of love with Feng Yu when he was of age. Now that I think of it, I still feel unhappy." However, Wei Ci's identity meant that he could not use his father's identity to make things difficult for Feng Yu. He could not even overreact. The emperor also turned a blind eye to their private relationship. Wei Ci was worried that the young emperor would be hurt, so he had insomnia. "Does your highness know what the outcome would be if you chose Feng Yu? With Feng Yu's looks, he will definitely be an important official in the court in the future." How could he? He made a promise without permission when he was young. What if he regrets in the future? At this point, Wei Ci could not continue because he thought of himself. Jiang Yin did not even frown as she marked the memorials. "Grand Tutor, you think too much. I am the future ruler of the world. Do I have to be restrained by a man? It is enough that both parties are in love. What else does Feng Yu want? One day, if he really has a change of heart, I will secretly grant him a death sentence. The secrets of the royal family and the dignity of the emperor cannot be tarnished. Only the dead can keep their mouths shut." Wei Ci was stunned for a while and asked, "Is he willing?" Jiang Yin asked doubtfully, "Why not? Behind the scenes, he is the emperor's man. In front of others, he is the second son of the Feng family. He is an important official who holds great power in the court and is deeply favored by the emperor. There are gains and losses. He has to give up some things to get everything. For example, the inheritance of the clan, a normal marriage. If not, I will give him a male heir in the future and secretly bring him back to inherit the clan. The court today cannot tolerate so much willfulness." Perhaps it was because she grew up in such an environment. Jiang Yin accepted it without any resistance. She was the uncrowned young empress, so the country, the imperial court, and the people were her main focus. Romantic relationships were not as important. Jiang Yin knew that this would be a grievance for Feng Yu, but as she said, she did not lose anything other than a proper title in marriage. Wei Ci asked her, "Feng Yu agreed too?" Jiang Yin said, "He took the initiative to mention it to me. I feel that this person is very tactful and has been my study companion since I was young. It's good to know him well. Since he was going to have children anyway, why not find someone who is pleasing to the eye, tactful, and helpful? At the very least, I don't need to get to know him." Wei Ci sighed. Compared to his father, Feng Yu's ability to read people's minds is superior to his father's. She had seen through Jiang Yin's thoughts. She had taken the initiative to make concessions and sacrifice herself in exchange for a favorable impression. "I like to deal with smart people. Feng Yu is very sensible, so you don't have to think too much. There are too many deceptions in the imperial court. It's rare for someone to be willing to be honest with me. This feeling is quite refreshing." Jiang Yin said calmly, "Grand Tutor, you don't have to worry that I'll be at a disadvantage. No matter how clear Feng Yu is about Gu's thoughts, it was Gu who allowed him to see it. He can't do it." Wei Ci did not know what to say. He looked at Jiang Yin with a complicated and deep gaze. Strangely, he felt a trace of sympathy for Feng Yu. Jiang Pengji listened to Wei Ci's recount and patted his shoulder. "Even though that child is telling the truth, I still feel that you've been stabbed in the heart several times by her." Wei Ci was speechless. Thinking back carefully, young Emperor Jiang Yan's words were indeed quite heart-wrenching. Jiang Pengji said, "I'm looking forward to this, Jiang Yan." Wei Ci said, "I didn't fulfill my responsibility as a teacher and a father. When she was young, she loved to smile, but as she grew older, she became more and more expressionless. From her marriageable age until Wei Ci's death, he had never seen her smile again." Jiang Pengji laughed heartlessly. Different identities, different ways of living. If not, How can we keep the demons and monsters in the imperial court under control? I heard from you that the political situation in the early years of the Jiang dynasty was quite grim. Young Emperor Jiang Yin has only inherited the throne for a few years. If he didn't harden his heart, the imperial court would have long been in chaos. It seems that one Zheng, Zhi and the others are still waiting for long periods of time. The little emperor is under a lot of pressure. Wei Xi thought about it and could not help but sigh. You're right, my lord. His way of education was indeed a failure. He intended to teach Fusho to become a famous scholar who lived like a cloud and a wild crane, but in the end, he made a grave mistake. According to his way of education, once young Emperor Jiang Yin was taught to study and be inflexible, how could he sit firmly on the throne? When the two of them conversed, the entire streaming room was silent, as if everyone's computer had crashed. If not for the fact that the avatars of the audience were all lit up, Jiang Pengji would have thought that the streaming room had been shut down. Tuda Feiqiu. Oh my god, what did I hear? Porcelain beauty. Did he just say that it was his previous life? Wenmie Kang, sure. It's a lie, right? Zi Xiao actually used the script of a reborn person? Ko Jiao Chi fan. There's so much information in today's streaming room. I was so shocked that my brain froze just now. Zi Xiao is actually a reborn male protagonist? No. As a reborn male protagonist, shouldn't the correct way to be reborn be to take advantage of the opportunity to recruit troops and conquer the world? The script is not right. The 500 salted fish were all confused. According to Wei Ci, the streamer was also an emperor in her previous life. The streamer also had a daughter with Wei Ci, and this daughter was the future empress. She also seemed to have the style of a cold and aloof older sister. Everyone couldn't help but shake their heads to check if their brains were filled with water. Yan Rian, Manual Det, Beauty Zi Xiao, as the male protagonist, ended up using the script of a reborn female protagonist. In his previous life, he was depressed and failed to achieve his ambitions. He committed suicide in front of the palace and died tragically. After his rebirth, he worked hard and turned over a new leaf. He tried his best to cling to the female protagonist's thigh and make up for his regrets. He held the streamer's little hand and walked to the peak of life together, leaving his name in history. Oh my, this plot is so girly that it's been written too much. A legamen. What does this mean? This means that Zi Xiao, as a man, has the heart of a little princess. Otherwise, how could she be the female protagonist? Minmin Erkshu. I always thought that the streamer was Mary Sue, but the streamer is actually Long Ao Yin, vomiting blood. The salted fish expressed that today's bends were especially scary. A group of experienced drivers all crashed at the bends. Buqian Yaiko Sanian, Jiang Ao Yin X Mary Wei, I'll eat this couple. I'll eat it with tears in my eyes. Not to mention that Weibo was flooded again. Jiang Pengji was in a particularly good mood when she saw the contents of the bullet screen. The time they spent together was exceptionally short. Jiang Pengji began to busy herself again. The battle preparations were nearing the end. She only had to wait for the flag to be raised, and the army could set off for the battle. In another place, the travel-worn Yen Lin finally met the current head of the Nie family, Nie Liang. Chapter 1449. Yen Lin's trip to Zhongzhou not only brought Yang Tao a powerful ally, but also affected the balance of power within the Nie family. In order to train his eldest son, Nie Qing, Nie Liang didn't do it himself. Instead, he let his son do it for him and successfully facilitated the alliance between the two families. In order to live up to his father's expectations, Nie Qing had been racking his brains and hadn't had a good night's sleep. Despite his pure and kind personality, Nie Qing wasn't stupid. He had completed the task his father had given him perfectly, and the officials who were loyal to Nie Liang had a whole new level of respect for him. From that day on, Nie Qing didn't have much time to read poetry anymore. He spent most of his time at his desk working on government affairs. When he finally had time, he immediately went to his cousin, Nie Yang, to complain. Nie Yang saw him and said sourly, I was looking for you a while ago, but I couldn't find you. Why did you suddenly come to see an old acquaintance? Nieching had lost a lot of weight recently. He thought that Nieyang was really angry and quickly tried to defend himself. Yang, don't be angry. I didn't want to see you. I was so busy that I didn't even have time for my meals. Nieching said bitterly. Yang didn't know. I don't know why father has been leaving me to deal with these days. In order to live up to father's expectations, how could I not take it seriously? I've been so busy that I've neglected Yang. I'm here to apologize. Nieyang knew when to stop, and his expression softened. He didn't have the sourness from before, but instead showed some concern. It's a good thing that uncle entrusted you with such an important task. Why are you apologizing? Seeing this, Nieching's expression relaxed again. His cousin was just this kind and understanding. Actually, I'm here to ask for Yang's help with something. Nieyang said self-deprecatingly. I don't have much ability, but if there's anything I can help you with, I won't refuse. Nieching said, I don't have anyone I can rely on. Yang, are you willing to be my right-hand man? Nieyang had no reason to refuse this invitation. He couldn't have asked for more. As time passed, Nieyang and the system realized that Nieyang had been modifying and cultivating the firstborn. The system couldn't sit still anymore and bombarded Nieyang's ears. You're really not anxious at all. Nieyang is planning to pave the way for his son. Nieyang picked his ear and said leisurely, anyone who isn't blind can tell. Nieyang did not have much time left. If he did not correct his son's temper, even if Nieyang cleared the obstacles for his son before he died, Nieching would not be able to hold on. What do you call that? The emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is. If Nieyang wants to train them, then let him train them. We just have to quietly wait for Nieyang to die of illness. There's no need to play any tricks. After saying that, he took out a roll of bamboo slips and read it carefully, as if he was engrossed in reading the books of the sages. The system was rendered speechless by him. Everything about its host was good except for her temper, which gave it a headache. She often refuted its opinions. For the system, a host that was too opinionated was not a good thing, because it meant that it would be difficult to control. The temptation of power is too great. At the same time, it can change people beyond recognition. Do you think that Nieching can still be controlled by you after gaining power? The system could not help but scare Nieyang, but Nieyang was unmoved. Are you that confident that you can control Nieching? Don't I still have you? Nieyang rolled his eyes. Even Nieyang fell for it, let alone Nieching. The system was stunned by his words. Why was this shameless attitude so hateful? At this time, an extremely heavy orange cat struggled to climb up the window ledge and fell to the other side with a meow. Nieyang's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. He reached out to the cat and called out softly, Cat, come here. The orange cat shook its head, meowed, and obediently passed its paw to the other party. Nieyang hugged the extremely heavy orange cat in his arms, his fingers running through its fur as he skillfully stroked the cat. The orange cat initially resisted, but after a while, it comfortably closed its eyes. Seeing this, the system could not bear to watch anymore. Nieyang, are you such a cat lover? Help this damn fatty lose weight. If he gets any fatter, he'll be in trouble. Because the servants around him were all sent away, Nieyang did not need to answer in his mind. Instead, he smiled and asked, Is it very heavy? The system complained. 9 out of 10 orange cats are heavy, and one of them is extremely heavy. Nieyang continued, So what if it's heavy? I can still raise it. While the two of them were talking, they did not notice that the orange cat was looking at Nieyang's chin from tricky angle. Forget it. I'll ignore this dumb cat of yours. Nieyang hugged the heavy orange cat in his arms again, preparing to go out for a walk. My cat doesn't need you to care. The orange cat was in low spirits, so Nieyang used his finger to scratch the cat's chin and whispered a few words. The cat arrogantly turned its head away. Stop throwing a tantrum. Go out and play. Remember to come back early. Nieyang smiled as he put the cat down. After the orange cat landed, it shook its fur and walked unsteadily, as if it was drunk. The orange cat disappeared into the garden, probably to catch butterflies and flowers. Everyone knew that Nie Yang indulged in playthings and kept an extraordinarily fat orange cat by his side. Many people mocked him for his poor taste. Nie Yang was unmoved. Instead, he doted on the cat more and more. All the expensive flowers in the garden were the cat's toys. It could be seen that the orange cat could be considered a tyrant among cats. Our cat Tyrant revealed a human-like confusion and fear. It covered its eyes with its paws and whimpered. Why is it that everyone else transmigrated into a human, but I'm an orange cat? This cat is too fat. It's panting after 2 steps. The cat Tyrant angrily patted the soil under its paws and kept meowing. Mr. Cat was the lucky person who participated in the Dream of 1,000 Years activity. In his eyes, there was a virtual screen in front of him. Not only did countless salted fish not sympathize with him, but they also laughed at him. Up until now, there were already more than 10 lucky people. Although the previous few didn't meet Jiang Pengji, they were still humans. Only this one turned into a cat, and his landing place changed from Dongqing to Zhongzhou. Yes, the cat first became Nie Yang's pet cat. Fang Heting, what else can you do besides laughing? Didn't you notice that the little brother's reaction was scary? There was no one else besides the cat. Who was he talking to? The way he talked to himself gave people goosebumps. By Shuega, what I care about the most is that sentence, don't we still have you? Even Ye Yang fell for it, let alone Nie Qing. Nie Yang was the strongest duke in the Nie family of Zhongzhou. What did he fall for? They didn't know Nie Qing's identity, but they felt something was off. The salted fish didn't notice any more clues, but Jiang Pengji saw it clearly. The young man, named Nie Yang, had a broken piece of the system on him. He could easily tell who he was talking to. Chapter 1450. It's not scary to be a cat. It's scary to be an orange cat. The huge and fat orange cat squatted on the wall, looking at the scenery outside the courtyard. It was sad and bright, meowing from time to time. If anyone understood cat language, they would know that the cat was muttering. Is there any place to give a bad review for the Dream of a Millennium event? I can't stand this injustice. It's rare for me to be lucky, but I actually became a cat after transmigrating. It's fine if I become a cat, but why can't I become the panda raised by Beauty CI? Even if I can't be the panda that shares Beauty C's bed, I can't be an orange cat. Look at this weight, look at this body. I'm panting after every 3 steps. The audience laughed and laughed at him. Qingxi Changqing Si Xiao, brother, you're brave. You actually want to become the panda raised by Beauty CI. The streamer's streaming room is connected to this sub-streaming room. She knows what you're wearing. Do you want to have intimate contact with the god-slaying saber? Jiang Pengji is famous for being narrow-minded. Who has the guts to touch her man? Huji Azibo. A panda isn't a cat, it's a bear. Meow, meow, meow. Brother orange cat, don't move your butt. Can't you see that the tiles on the wall are about to be broken by you? Salted fish have no sympathy. The orange cat looked at the bullet screen and sighed faintly. At that moment, the ears on his head twitched. He acutely heard footsteps approaching. He turned his head and saw a tall and handsome young man standing under the courtyard wall. His appearance was still a little immature, somewhere between a youth and a teenager. Good looks and good temperament. The fat orange cat shook his whiskers. His wounded heart was healed. Although he couldn't hug Beauty CI, the young man in front of him was also very good. He had a bit of the demeanor of Wei CI when he was young. Isn't this a Yang's cat? Why did you come here? Nie Qing reached out to Fatty Orange. The other party was unmoved, his posture as steady as a mountain. He smiled and asked the servant to bring something to stand on his feet. Then he carried the cat down. As soon as he was in Nie Qing's arms, Fatty Orange let out a long meow, wishing he could roll in the young man's arms. Brothers, the arms of this high-quality, beautiful young man are full of the smell of sunshine. It smells so good. In the live stream room, Salted Fish was even more jealous. Wasn't this cat's luck too good? Qiu Yi Xia Hua. What does sunlight taste like? My corpse? Fatty Orange relied on the fact that he was a cat. Nie Qing and the others couldn't understand what he was saying, so he meowed at the audience in the live broadcast room. When Nye saw Fatty Orange's unusual behavior, he hurriedly returned the kitten to Nye. As the two conversed, Fatty Orange and Salted Fish realized that this cheerful youth was Nye. Seeing Nye and Nye getting along so well with each other, the crowd couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They weren't deaf. Nye words, even Nye fell for it, not to mention Nye, were clearly filled with malice. Thus, when Nye was about to return the kitten to Nye, Fatty Orange clung onto Nye sleeve tightly, his cries of agony and sorrow. Nye smiled bitterly. You usually despise it. Why do you like it so much today? Nye also said, then I'll have to trouble elder brother to take care of him for a day or two. Perhaps he's throwing a tantrum. Nye had no choice but to carry the orange cat away. He knew that his cousin liked the cat very much, so he took good care of it. The orange cat also took the opportunity to wander around Nye room. Seeing that Nye had started working, he even climbed onto the desk and squatted down, looking like he was supervising Nye. Nye originally wanted to carry Fatty Orange away, but the kitten was so obedient that he softened his heart and didn't stop him. Little did he know that Fatty Orange's body contained a future soul. Through Fatty Orange's eyes, Jiang Pengji could clearly see the contents of the documents that Nye was handling. Nye had the heart to groom his son, but he didn't pass any important secrets to him, so these documents were of no use to Jiang Pengji. Fatty Orange was hesitant to write something to remind the youth in front of him. Nye had malice towards him and Nye, so he had to be on guard. But just as Fatty Orange was about to go crazy, the system's notification made his whole body go cold, as if he'd been splashed with cold water. Now that he was a cat, the words he could write with his claws were already shocking enough. Would Nye believe him if he wrote it? If Nye went to confront Nye and accidentally revealed something, this cat's life would be forfeit. Thinking of this, Fatty Orange couldn't help but shiver. He had only transmigrated for 4 hours. He couldn't be the first unlucky person to encounter a life-threatening crisis and have his transmigration interrupted. Could he? The owner of this body, Fatty Orange, was also innocent. After being transmigrated, he was beaten to death by his owner. That was too cruel. Fatty Orange's thoughts of intervening were suppressed, and he didn't dare to let his imagination run wild. Forget it. He was just an outsider who experienced transmigration. How could he intervene in someone else's life? Fatty Orange wagged his tail and lay quietly on Nye lap, looking like he was saying, I'll take over this territory. Nye smiled faintly and shook his head, giving his consent to this audacious cat. They ate, slept, enjoyed the service of the shit-shoveling officer, and took a walk together. Nye pinched Fatty Orange's chubby cheeks and said, No wonder Ayang likes you so much. I like you a little too. Fatty Orange couldn't control his body's habit. He stuck out his tongue and licked his fur, throwing a look of disdain at Nye as he licked. Young man, you have to be more careful. Stay away from Nye to ensure your safety. Nye didn't receive Fatty Orange's look. Instead, he strolled all the way to the family school. The man and the cat could clearly hear the sound of reading coming from within the courtyard walls. Fatty Orange squatted on his shoulder and revealed a thoughtful expression. Nye stroked Fatty Orange's cat and sighed. I really hope that one day, such peace and tranquility can spread throughout China. Father is going to lead the army into battle. If he can return victorious, we'll be closer to our goal. After a while, Nye said again, Unfortunately, Father thinks that I'm too young and ordered me to guard the rear. Otherwise, I really want to lead the army with Father and kill the enemy. Fatty Orange rolled his eyes. Kill the enemy? With your soft skin and tender flesh? Father's health is getting worse. I'm very worried, but this matter can't be easily leaked. I can only talk to you, you little bastard. Nye somewhat understood why Nye liked cats. They were obedient and didn't speak the human language, so he didn't have to worry about being on guard when talking to them. After a few hours, Fatty Orange's energy was exhausted, and he fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up again, he was extremely resistant to Nie Qing. He howled and wanted to find his master, Nie Yang. Nie Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Jiang Pengji looked at the screen and pondered. Nie Yang, can we really have fun? His fingers twirled the clean brush, his deep eyes filled with malice. If that's the case, we can change our strategy. Jiang Pengji originally planned to attack Yang Tao fiercely and adopt a defensive policy at the Zhongzhou front. Chapter 1451. Even though everyone already knew of their lord's temperament, changing the battle plan before the battle still made them sprain their backs. My lord, changing your mind before the battle is not a good sign. As a commander-in-chief, she cannot be so capricious. Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at Wei Zixiao out of the corner of his eye. He happened to catch Wei Zi's unmoving gaze. After pondering for a while, Qiguan Rang restrained his helpless expression and regained his composure. He stepped forward and asked, "Why did you do this, my lord?" According to the initial battle plan, they focused their forces on Yang Tao and prepared to take down Zhangzhou in the shortest time possible before attacking Nanxing. The Nie family of Zhongzhou had a fierce military force, but the army was backed by Zhanjiang Pass. They used the natural stronghold there to defend the pass, so it would be difficult for the Nie family to attack. Zhanjiang Pass was the gateway between Dongqing and Zhongzhou. The terrain there was very steep, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. When Meng Zhan stirred up trouble and tried to sell Cangzhou to the Nie family of Zhongzhou, the Nie family eagerly sent people over for Zhanjiang Pass. No matter who took down Zhanjiang Pass, it was very profitable. If the Nie family got it, they would have the initiative in attacking. If Jiang Pengji had it, it would be much easier for her to defend. Because of the two battles, the troops under Jiang Pengji's tent had been divided into two. They had been marching for 2 days. One was to attack Yang Tao of Nansheng. The other was to attack Zhanjiang Pass of Cangzhou to stop the Nie family from breaking through. The former was to attack, while the latter was to defend. Naturally, the assigned troops and personnel were different. His lord slapped her forehead and said that she wanted to change the battle plan. It would have a huge impact in the future. If they were not careful, they would delay the battle and cause endless trouble. Due to the trust between the ruler and her subjects, Qiguan Rang wanted to hear his lord's reason for doing so. If the reason could convince him, he would support it. If his lord's reason could not convince Qiguan Rang would definitely not let her mess around. He thought that Wei Ci and his lord had discussed this, but when he glanced at him just now, Wei Ci's expression was also very surprised. Thinking of this, Qiguan Rang fanned the feather fan in his hand more frequently. The frequency was more than doubled, causing his outer robe to flutter. Jiang Pengji looked at Wei Ci. Wei Ci stepped forward and bowed. "My lord, it doesn't matter if you change the plan, but the difficulty lies in the fact that you have to adjust the troops on 2 routes and drag the logistics and rations. It is a taboo for a commander to change at the last minute. In Ci's opinion, I would like to ask my lord to reconsider before making a decision." Since Wei Ci and Qiguan Rang had expressed their vague objections, the others were naturally harder to convince. However, Jiang Pengji had accumulated her power for a long time, so they didn't threaten her. Let's hear what the Lord has to say first before deciding whether to support or oppose it. On the other hand, Sun Wen frowned as he realized that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Sun Wen had the least contact with Jiang Pengji, but that didn't stop him from treating his lord as a research topic. He often pondered over her. According to his understanding, his lord was a typical person who would not get up early without benefits. It was impossible for her not to know the potential dangers of changing her mind. Jiang Pengji glanced around, and her gaze fell on Sun Zidao, who was seated at the back. What does Zidao know about the Nie family of Zhongzhou? Of all the people present, only Sun Wen was from Zhongzhou. If one were to talk about understanding, the great scholar Wan Xian, Wan Changzhai, understood him the best. However, he was an educator. Jiang Pengji still counted on him to help her manage the Jinlin branch. How could she bear to drag him to the front line to suffer? Nye-sun could also help, but he was disheartened and didn't meddle in these matters anymore. Jiang Pingji didn't want to force her cousin to become an official, so she turned a blind eye to his affairs. After counting them, there was only Sun Wen left. Sun Wen said, the Nye family originated in the early years of the Northern Qin dynasty. It has a history of nearly 700 years. They lived in Bianzhou for a long time. They have a deep foundation. After many generations of family heads, they have disciples and former officials all over the world. The Nye family is related to many gentry families by marriage. The relationships between the forces are complicated. Zhongzhou is in chaos, and the royal family is tyrannical. When the Nye family raised their arms and called for help, 3 prefectures responded. They now occupy more than half of Zhongzhou. Before the 16 kingdoms, the Central Plains had been unified for 367 years. It was called the Northern Qin dynasty. The Nye family had prospered since the early years of the Northern Qin dynasty. It had continued to this day without losing its legacy. It should be noted that the Feng family, which Feng Jin belonged to, was only 100 years earlier than the Nye family. Is there anything else besides this? She joked. The Nye family has hundreds of responses to a single call. The hearts of the people are aligned. Did I kick an iron plate? Sun Wen's expression was solemn as he denied it. What a joke. If his lord was afraid to fight, his dream of revenge would really remain a dream. My lord, you must be joking. Sun Wen said, if the Nye family is described as a 1,000-year-old tree with deep roots and luxuriant branches, its crown can cover the sky and the sun. Others are fearful of it, but that doesn't include my lord. Outsiders are afraid of the Nye family. Is it really because the Nye family is powerful and unrivaled? In my opinion, they are obviously frightened by the tiger's skin that the Nye family wears. My lord is a real dragon. Why would you be afraid of these things? Jiang Pengji said, the tiger's skin that the Nye family wears? How do you explain this? Sun Wen said, does my lord still remember the Su family from Zhou? Jiang Pengji nodded. Of course she remembered. Su Bei and Su Fei, the pair of brothers who suffered hardship. Now that she thought about it, she still sighed. Sun Wen said, the Su family from Zhou is a good example for the Nye family from Bianzhou. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and smiled. Tell me in detail. Sun Wen said, now, the most senior in the Nye family and the most influential person is the grandfather of Nye Yang, the marquis of the Nye family. Before Nye Yang took power, the entire Nye family was under his control. Those who are old and don't die are thieves. He is no exception. He held on to his authority and refused to let go. In order to stabilize his position in the family, he deliberately suppressed his children and made them tired of fighting among themselves. He has many grandchildren, but the only outstanding one is Nye Yang. Although there was not much information, Sun Wen could guess how Nye Yang had risen to power. It was a pity that Nye Yang was not ruthless enough. He did not cut through the Gordian knot and get rid of the obstacles in his way. Now he was troubled. Jiang Pengji asked again. In that case, the tiger skin that you mentioned is, Sun Wen said, the Nye family has an empty shell, but inside there is disunity and disunity. They're like a plate of loose sand. There is nothing to be afraid of when the children fight. If it was the Nye family that was united, it would not be easy to fight. If they were unlucky, it might even become a protracted war. Of course, these problems had not spread to the bone. If the head of the Nye family had the decisiveness to cut off his tail and seek survival, he might be able to turn the situation around. Sun Wen asked her, is it because of this that my lord feels that the Nye family is easier to deal with than Yang Tao? Chapter 1452. Nye Yang? Qiguan rang, and the others looked at each other. They did not receive any news. Wei Si stepped forward and said, when you mentioned this, I thought of something. A few years ago, the Nye family sent Nye Yang as an envoy to Dongqing in an attempt to force you to hand over Cangzhou. In the end, the Nye family returned without success. Nye Yang and his men left in a hurry. Qiguan Rang interrupted. Niel Yang's health has been poor since then? Wei Si smiled bitterly and asked Jiang Pengji to punish him. He continued, "My elder brother is Niel Yang's right-hand man. My elder brother secretly asked me to feel Niel Yang's pulse. I was shocked to find that Niel Yang's diet and medicine were poisoned. His lifespan was greatly reduced. Even if he recuperates carefully afterward, I'm afraid he won't live long. I heard that Niel Yang fought for power with my grandfather. He has to look over everything personally. He probably doesn't have time to recuperate." This indirectly proved Jiang Pengji's intelligence. Of course, Jiang Pengji did not blame Wei Si. He had confessed to her about this in the past. Qiguan Rang frowned. "The secret agents sent by our army did not find any news of Niel Yang being sick or weak. Not only was there no news, but the secret agents also found out that Niel Yang ate 2 big bowls of food every time. He often rode horses and hunted. His complexion was excellent. Did he look like he did not have long to live?" Jiang Pengji said, "What do you mean, Wenzheng?" Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pengji helplessly. His lord had made up her mind to change the plan. Changing one's mind at the last minute will have a great impact. If it is not handled well, it will shake the army's morale. Please reconsider, my lord. Jiang Pengji had naturally considered this point. They could not come to a stalemate and could only temporarily disperse the meeting. Wei Si and Qiguan Rang left one after another. Qiguan Rang asked Wei Si, "How confident are you in this matter?" Wei Si said, "Niel Yang's health is indeed not very good. He doesn't have time to recuperate carefully. I'm afraid he's been using tiger wolf medicine all these years. If I'm optimistic, it's estimated that he only has 1 year left. If I'm pessimistic, he can still struggle on for another 2 to 3 years. He won't live long." In the previous life, Niel Yang also knelt at about this time, kneeling disgracefully. Everyone knew that Niel Yang was in poor health, but only a few people knew that there was something fishy about his death, and Wei Si happened to be one of them. In his previous life, Niel Yang did not trust anyone except his eldest brother, Wei Xiao. Wei Chong secretly invited Wei Si to the residence to take Niel Yang's pulse. From the pulse, it was clear that Niel Yang's poison had entered his bone marrow. However, the physician hired by the Nie family insisted that it was a congenital weakness and a cold. The medicine that was prescribed was naturally not right, and the longer it was delayed, the more serious it became. Wei Si helped Niel Yang recuperate for a while and expelled most of the poison, but he still could not save Niel Yang's life. Who asked Niel Yang to be too capable? The Nie clan's 5th branch was practically in an invincible position. How could the other uncles endure it? In his previous life, Niel Yang did not lay a hand on his clansmen until his death. Perhaps it could be said that by the time he realized he had been poisoned by his clansmen, it was already too late. On his deathbed, Niel Yang entrusted his child to his good friend Yu. Wei Yong did not disappoint his good friend. Not only did he marry his daughter to him, but he also taught and nurtured him as his own son. Thinking of this, the face of a young man with a light smile appeared in Wei Si's mind. He had interacted with Niel Yang's eldest son, Nie Qing, a few times and had a good impression of this youth. Nie Qing did not enjoy the benefits brought about by the Nie clan's reputation. Instead, he was dragged down by the Nie clan and was implicated time and time again. It was truly regrettable. In the 18th year of the reign of Yongchun, the emperor was bedridden for several months. The aristocrats were eager to take action, and Crown Prince Zhang Zhuo forced the emperor to abdicate under their support. It was more like a farce than a forced abdication. The main character of the farce, Crown Prince Zhang Zhuo, was also kept in the dark and became a puppet in the hands of others. The aristocrats at the side were secretly adding fuel to the fire. Other than the large clans like the Nie clan and the Wei clan, the other aristocrats were also involved, stirring up a turbulent situation in the imperial court. According to Wei Si's understanding of young Emperor Jiangyan, none of these meddlesome people would have a good ending. That was the truth. Not long after the coffin of the deceased emperor was buried in the mausoleum, the young emperor swept through the imperial court swiftly and decisively. None of the aristocrats who were involved fared well, and all of them suffered great losses. This was Wei Si's previous life. The changes in this life were too great. Everything was different. Niel Yang, who was originally only playing the supporting role, became the leader and became the head of the Nye clan. However, there were many things that did not change. Niel Yang was still fated to die early. In his previous life, Sun Wen had prolonged the life of the Nye clan, but now, Wei Si counted the time on his fingers and could not help but feel relieved. After the internal strife in the Nye clan, the third branch became the final winner. In the end, a young man named Nye Yang came out on top. Nye Yang was scheming, but unfortunately he lacked some luck. At that time, the Nye clan was already beyond saving. Qiguan Rang said, "The difference between 1 year and 2 or 3 years is huge. My lord seems to have made up her mind. My lord's temperament is like this. When she's stubborn, even 10 oxen can't pull her back." Qiguan Rang fanned himself and asked, "Do you have a way to make the best of both worlds? The strength of the troops on both sides is not much different. It's not appropriate to change the leader at the last minute. It's better to make the best of a mistake and replenish the logistics." For the other feudal lords, they had to mobilize their elites to attack the main area. The troops in the defensive area were relatively weak. Because of the terrain at the pass, the requirements for the quality of the elite troops could be lowered appropriately. Jiang Pengji's camp was different. Her troops were trained over and over again. Except for a small number of newly recruited troops, the rest were considered elites. Their overall quality was very high. There was not much difference in which troops attacked or defended. Therefore, Wei Si suggested increasing the investment and building more equipment to make up for the hidden danger of changing her mind at the last minute. Qiguan Rang said in distress, "In this way, there will be a shortage of rations. It will be hard to survive the winter." Transport and manufacturing equipment also required cooks. Cooks also needed to eat. Naturally, the expenditure on rations would increase. That was an astronomical figure that greatly exceeded the budget. If there was a shortage of rations during the war, it would be a dead end. Wei Si said, "This is already the only solution. Why don't Wenjung persuade my lord to change her mind?" Qiguan Rang snorted coldly. Wei Si and his lord had slept together before. If he could not make his lord waver, Qiguan Rang would most likely return in failure. At that moment, Sun Wen quietly went to see Jiang Pengji and expressed his intentions. "You want to go to the Nye camp?" "Why?" The two families were obviously going to fall out, but Sun Wen still had the guts to go. Sun Wen said, "My lord, are you sure that Niel Yang doesn't have long to live?" Jiang Pengji did not give him a definite answer. She said, "I'm 60% sure." Sun Wen said, 60% is enough. Whether Niel Yang is really sick or not, we'll know when we see him for ourselves. The two armies are about to go to war. What if they detain you? The two armies did not want to go to war, but it did not prevent them from acting like hooligans and secretly detaining people. Sun Wen said with a smile, "I'm already a bag of old bones. There's nothing to cherish." Jiang Pengji said with a displeased expression, "How precious is life? If I don't cherish myself, who will cherish Sun Lan?" Sun Lan had not grown up yet. Was Sun Wen really willing to let her go? When Sun Wen heard that, he could only smile bitterly and change his words. In the end, he still managed to persuade Jiang Pengji to agree to go to the Nye camp. Chapter 1453. Jiang Pengji's troops were divided into two groups. One group followed her to Zhanjiang Pass in Sangzhou, while the other group was led by Fu Wang to Hu County to prepare for the war. Fu Wang's army had yet to arrive at the front line when an urgent secret letter was sent, making him think that something big had happened. Fu Wang crushed the bamboo tube and took out the neatly folded letter. He opened the letter and squinted his eyes to read it carefully. After reading 10 lines at a glance, his sword-like eyebrows furrowed so tightly that they could kill a fly. "Someone, quickly invite the general's advisor here. Say that there's something important to discuss." He was a little annoyed. Didn't he lead the troops to attack Yang Tao? Why did she change the order and let him focus on defense and attack when the opportunity arose. The experience of attacking and defending were completely different. Fu Wang had always attacked as a form of defense and rarely defended passively. At present, the military camp's allocation of supplies was mainly for attack. Their defensive capabilities were relatively weak. Jiang Pengji's order put him in a difficult position. Although the logistical supplies were already on the way, it would take some time to transport them to the front line. If something happened during this time, such as the enemy suddenly launching a sneak attack, it would be a pain in the ass. He summoned everyone to the main tent overnight to discuss how to stabilize the situation and clean up the mess caused by his lord's last-minute change of orders. By the time they reached a conclusion, the sky outside the tent had completely darkened, like a pool of ink that couldn't be stirred up. It was midsummer, and the temperature was hot and humid. There were so many mosquitoes and flies around the tent that they couldn't sleep. Feng Zhen went back to get a basin of water to wipe his sweat, but he still couldn't sleep. He simply came out for some fresh air. Not long after walking, he met a familiar face. Feng Zhen wiped his sweat with a handkerchief in his left hand and fanned himself with a cattail leaf fan in his right. He said to Yang Si, "Jingrong, you can't sleep in the middle of the night?" Yang Si wore thin pajamas and a light muslin cloak. His slightly damp, long hair draped over his shoulders. He was probably too angry to sleep. Glancing at Feng Zhen from the corner of his eye, Yang Si said calmly, "Aren't you the same?" The news of the change in military orders came too suddenly. Not many people could sleep peacefully. I've been weak and afraid of heat since I was young. Summer is especially hard to bear, Feng Zhen said. I've enjoyed too much in the north these years. I'm not used to this weather. Feng Zhen was from Zhangzhou's Anshan County. Logically speaking, he should have been used to it, but he was even more afraid of heat than Yang Si. Both of them couldn't sleep, and since they had nothing to do in the middle of the night, they decided to play chess and play a few rounds. Yang Si could tell Feng Zhen's state of mind with one look at his playing style. He was impatient and full of worries, unlike prodigal Feng. Feng Zhen had lost 3 rounds in a row. He waved his hand disinterestedly and said, "No more, no more. I'm not in the right condition today." Yang Si thought of something and asked, "Zisher, are you worried about your son's safety?" According to the original plan, Fu Wang's army would be the main attacking force, while Jiang Pengji's army would mainly defend. Occupying the natural stronghold of Zhanjiang Pass, the troops under the tent were all elites. The difficulty of defending against invading enemies was relatively low, and the danger was also greatly reduced. Now that the order had been changed, Zhanjiang Pass had switched from defense to offense, and the danger level had skyrocketed. Feng Yi had been assigned to the Lord's team and could face life-threatening danger at any time. This child has always been smart and sensible. It's the first time he's been so far away from home, and he doesn't have any relatives to take care of him. Feng Zhen usually behaved in a carefree manner, and his attitude towards his son was completely lax, but he was very concerned about him. Yang Si couldn't help but laugh. Outsiders say that prodigal Feng only cares about his own happiness and doesn't care about his son. Now that I see it, it doesn't seem so. Feng Zhen snorted inside. Most fathers feel the same way. He didn't say it, but he was concerned about him in his heart. Yang Si listened to Feng Zhen's sentiments and couldn't help but think of his child who was still in swaddling clothes. His and Jiang Shaowei's child was born last year. It was a baby girl. She was small and soft, and her limbs were so soft that they seemed to have no bones. When Yang Si hugged her for the first time, his hands were trembling. When the child meekly snuggled into his arms, an inexplicable emotion welled up in his heart, as if it wanted to fill up a certain empty wasteland. For the first time, he realized that he had become the father of another life. Yang Si could understand Feng Zhen's concern and concern for the child. The conditions of the march were harsh, and the summer nights were especially unbearable. Feng Yi tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep, so he simply picked up his sword and practiced outside. He only stopped when his arms were swollen and he was covered in sweat. Perhaps he was too tired, but he fell asleep as soon as he returned to his tent. He actually had a good night's sleep. There was still half a day's journey before they reached Zhangjiang Pass. Jiang Pingji led the troops and marched at a normal speed, while Sun Wen galloped toward Zhangjiang Pass under the escort of a group of troops and horses. The two armies hadn't started fighting, but there was an atmosphere of a storm brewing. It was solemn and dignified. The Nye family's army had already arrived at the front lines in batches and set up camp. Standing at the gates of Zhangjiang Pass and looking out, there was an endless stream of crimson flags at the end of the horizon, like a burning cloud. Not only did the flag have the word Nye on it, but it also had the Nye family's emblem. Within the borders of Zhongzhou, the common people recognized the word and the meaning of the emblem. The people near Zhangjiang Pass had long since fled after hearing the news. Their families had migrated to other places. If they stayed near the battlefield, who knew if they would be beheaded by the ruffian soldiers to claim their military exploits? It wasn't like such things had never happened in the past. In troubled times, human lives were as worthless as grass. It was a luxury to even cry out for grievances when one died. Sun Wen had already handed over the document that Jiang Pengji had personally written. This was diplomatic between the two armies. It was reasonable for Nye Liang to personally summon him. Nye Liang was sitting in the tent. Below him sat a group of trusted subordinates. These people were quite famous within the borders of Zhongzhou. In comparison, Nye Liang's close friend and trusted subordinate, Lao Ai, did not have much of presence. Nye Liang looked at the contents of the document and said, "The words are good, but the attitude is perfunctory." The contents of the document were personally written by Jiang Pengji, but the content was written by someone else. Why did Lu Shi send an envoy at this time? He's most likely here to test the waters. Lu Shi's troops are divided into two groups. The pressure is not small. Nansheng and Yang Tao are nothing to be afraid of, but they know very little about our army. I'm afraid they don't have much confidence in rashly starting a war, someone answered. Right, who is this envoy? Sun Wen? I don't think I've heard of him. The person who spoke was a young man in his early 20s. He felt that the name Sun Wen was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. Not only him, but the others in the tent also didn't immediately remember. It couldn't be helped. Apart from being in the limelight during the battle of the northern borderline, Sun Wen had been governing the rear. His presence was frighteningly low. Sun Wen? Wait, could it be Sun Zidao who works under Lu Shi's camp? Someone remembered. Why is this person here? It was rare in the world to be able to develop a spy's career to such an extent, to have one foot in several boats, and still do it with ease. Playing the northern borderline in the palm of his hand wasn't the most flashy thing. The most flashy thing was that after doing so many things, Sun Wen could still escape unscathed. Ever since the battle of the northern borderline, Sun Wen had quietened down. The outside world guessed that Jiang Pengji was afraid of Sun Wen, so she was demoted and hid him. They didn't expect Jiang Pengji to put Sun Wen in an important position at this time. Nye Liang lowered his eyes and said, "It's not a big deal to test the waters. The important thing is, what is he testing? Testing the strength of the Nye camp." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.